Hot takes are everywhere, but they're often uninformed, and major news is biased. We've had enough of hot takes. We want informed takes. Join Kevin Briggins and Devin Smith as they have rational conversations about domestic politics, geopolitics, and military affairs. Things will get interesting as they bring in expert guests, even from across the aisle. Grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and hop into the chat. It's time for Informed Takes.
Yo, welcome everybody to Informed Take. I am Kevin Briggins. He is Devin Smith, and we are glad that you all are with us. No matter where you're watching us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're finding us, we are glad that you are with us. Man, how you doing?
Man, I am doing well, man. It's a little bit of a different weekend. The wife and my eldest, my daughter, are out of town, so it's just me and two little boys, and it's been the expected amount of chaos, but it's good.
Yeah. People don't know, but Devin just jumped in the seat. He literally just jumped. He barely made it.
We came in on two wheels, man. But we made it. The boys are in the bed.
Right on time, man. So I get the feeling, you came in on two wheels, man. I get the feeling you don't have anything to drink, do you?
Oh man, hate to disappoint you, but I do.
Oh,
I got. It's real. We're just keeping it simple, man. It's bourbon and Coke, baby. Bourbon and Coke.
Nice.
What about
Classic.
you? What you got?
Classic.
What you got?
All right. So I told my wife, I was like, "Hey, make me a drink for the night." And she's like, "What you want?" I was like, "I don't know, just make some." So this woman has made, as you can see this.
Oh, snap.
Yes.
Whoa, we
yes.
got the full screen app for a second. Hold on. Oh my goodness. What are we working with here?
So normally I have my 4 toes lemonade, right? On the diabetes scale, you lose 4 toes. That's kind of my typical lemonade. This is about a 7-toe loss right here. And I'm gonna tell you why. So she put lemonade. So lemonade is the base. She put sweetened condensed milk, right? She did some type of like thing where she shaved like the lemon zest off the lemon peel and mixed it with some sugar and did some magic with it. She made some homemade whipped cream, and she also put sugar around the rim, and it's got a shot of tequila in it. And so think of like a So think of like a Chick-fil-A frosted lemonade with a shot of tequila in it. That's basically what I'm drinking on right now.
Wait a minute now. Inform Takes officially moving the studio to Alabama. What? Shalonda in charge of making the drinks from now on. I'm gonna need that.
Absolutely. So, so I'm right tonight. I'm good.
You definitely right, man. Oh my goodness, that's excellent.
It's a 7-toe loss though.
7 toes. 7 toes, man. Dang.
Yeah.
Man, got to have excellent balance. Oh, man.
Yeah. So, man, we have got some stuff to talk about this week. So I decided to write something.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. I had a little bit on my mind this week, and when I do that, I start to I got the right to get it out, And what was on my mind this week, because, last week was a lot of drama within some spaces that we operate in. And I just kind of thought to myself, how did we get here? How did we get here? How did we get to the point within the Black community to where mentally and emotionally we're almost in the same place we were in the 1950s and 60s? Right? In terms of our outlook in America, in terms of how we feel about race and racism and all of these types of things. How did we get here when there seemed to be a period of time, 90s, early 2000s, where we seem to have kind of turned a corner somewhat, right? And I just got started thinking like I need to write about how I feel like we got here. And so I write, but I'm not a writer. I tell everybody I am not a writer. But when something does come to my mind, I like to get it out. And so I wrote this article called Black America Was Robbed. And the premise was the premise behind it is just this idea that with the election of Barack Obama as president, we had kind of reached a milestone, right? That was very symbolic in our understanding of where um, Black people stood in America, I guess you can say, and what was achievable and what was the landscape in which we faced. And instead of one of hope, instead of this is a, a positive kind of point within the history of this narrative from slave ships to the White House in the same nation, right? You would think that's a story that in and of itself is a story. It's a movie, right? But it took a turn. It wasn't the happy Hollywood kind of climax ending that you would think it would be. And here we are, what are we now? 17 years after his first election. And we feel the feeling is that we're in a worse place than we were before. And so I just kind of wanted to write about how I think we got here, you know? And so I'm looking forward to diving into it. And I also decided to do it this week on the show because we left off something last week that we didn't get to. And I felt like it went really well with the next thing we're going to talk about even after this. And so the show is this is kind of the theme for the show is Black America and the political landscape is kind of our theme for tonight.
Yeah, man. I thought that the article was it was well said. I read it and in preparation for the show earlier this week, and I was, there's some things. I mean, basically there are so many things that you said in there that are the same conclusions that I reached before you and I ever met. The exact same conclusions that I had reached, and I posted a quote. I posted a quote from the article on my stories on Facebook and Instagram, and there were a lot of people who liked it. But I did catch some heat from some people close to me for posting that up. It essentially. Man, let me see if I can. I guess it's gone now. I can't find it because it's been over.
Yeah, and I
hours.
never saw it, so I don't know which quote it was.
It was. Let me see if I can pull up the article because I know that if I pull up the article, I would be able to. Find it real fast. But I mean, it basically comes down to, the fact that there's no. Man, I gotta find a way to say. Yeah,
you found it. So
I gotta find a way to say it without giving away the whole, thing. I want to let you kind of lead into this. I actually have a couple of graphics to pull up while you're talking about it. I put a some stuff from the article together because you definitely have to tell the story about the newspaper clipping. Yeah.
So when I write about this stuff, I'm a big person on context, and I want you to understand what's in my head, right? I want you to know where I'm coming from. So even if you don't agree with me, you will say, okay, well, I see where he's coming from, And a big part of that is telling the story and kind of laying it out as to, because it's really a personal story in a larger context, right? Of me getting this newspaper clipping from my dad. And so you want me to tell the story now or what?
Okay. Whenever you're ready. But I think that this is, I think it's important. It kind of sets the stage.
Yeah. So when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, I was already a conservative. I was 27 years old. And my political I'm gonna say my political positions didn't change. I always say I aligned my values with my politics. Growing up, growing up in the black community, you're just automatically a Democrat. And you're told Democrats are for black people, Republicans are racist or not for black people. And so you're just automatically a Democrat. But I had never looked at the parties and their platforms. I had never looked at the issues to determine how I should vote or how I should look at these two options. But once I did that, I realized that I wasn't on the Democrat side at all. We talk about how black people are naturally, not gonna say naturally, but just culturally, we're normally conservative. And so when I took my conservative, raised in the church, biblical values and principles, I found they aligned on the Republican side. So 2008 gets here, and once again, you don't just like that from the mountaintops that you're conservative in the black community or you're voting Republican. Especially when Barack Obama was on the ticket, you did not announce that you weren't voting for him. And so my dad, after the election, he's super happy, and he brought me over a gift. And that gift was a laminated copy of the front page of the Birmingham News declaring Obama's victory. And it was kind of awkward because, I wouldn't, I didn't vote for him. I wasn't rooting for him. But at the same time, I understood the historical significance of the moment. And so I was like, okay, this is what I'll do. I'm going to frame this and I'm going to put it in my office because this is truly a historical moment. Right. And so I did. I took it down to, I think it was Michael's. Went to Michael's, had, hey, I want to get this framed, and picked out the frame. And then the girl was like, hey, you want to get something engraved on it? And I was like, yeah, because I hadn't thought about getting it engraved. I was just trying to get it framed so I could hang it and make it nice, right? And I had to think about what I want on it. And I started to think about all of those comments that I heard as a kid, right? In the barbershop, hanging out. The big narrative was America was so racist that they never let a black man be president, right? That was just the thing. That was just given. Like, that's what America is. And 2008, that actually happened. America elected a black man who has a name that is not European, right? Barack Hussein Obama. You can't get, I mean, if they was going to elect somebody and it was like somebody named James Smith, I'm like, okay, no, a black dude named Barack Hussein Obama was elected president of the United States of America. The narrative that America itself is racist, in my mind, that narrative was dead. Like, there's no way you can say that at this point, right? And so I had something engraved on it, and what I chose to have engraved on it was 3 words: no more excuses, right? And so, because that's what I felt like it was an excuse to kind of explain away why we weren't where we wanted to be. It was just always, well, America's racist, so they'll never let a black man do this. No, I didn't get promoted at work because, white folks, it was just, everything was just deemed, if it didn't go right in my life, it was because racism and white people. Right. And I felt like this election of Barack Obama was proof that America itself was not racist. Now you can say, yeah, of course there are people who are racist. There are a ton of black people who are racist. But the point was this idea that America itself was racist and a black person could never get ahead. That's why I was like, that lie is shattered, So even though I wasn't rooting for him, I wasn't going to vote for him because of his policies and his, and where he stood on his politics. The fact that he got elected, even with his politics, was like, you can't say that America itself is racist. Well, at least I thought you could no more. But that was 2008. But we know how things changed after that. So
right.
I don't know if you wanted to point out something or what.
Oh no, I mean, I thought that it was It was brilliant that you decided to engrave no more excuses on that thing, man.
Yeah, and they did it so nice. They chose the fun. I was like, oh, this looks really nice.
Because when you told the story, I didn't see that coming. I really didn't see it coming. I remember where I was when we found out that he made it. Clarissa and I were engaged at the time, and if I'm not mistaken, yeah, we were engaged at the time, and we're watching the TV, and it actually happened, and people had tears in their eyes. It was just me and her watching the TV at her apartment, and I remember thinking to myself like, wow, now back then I held to a belief at that time. I was a believer. I was probably I was 4 years. I was 4 years into my walk with the Lord at that time. I was a new believer, and I believed that it was worldly to care about politics. And so I had a policy, a personal policy of not getting involved in politics. I took the scripture that says, no soldier, no good soldier that wars concerns himself with the affairs of this life. And so I took that as being one of the affairs of this life, that it had no eternal value. And so my attitude was, this is not of my concern. And I viewed everybody who cared about politics as being Christians who cared about politics as being too concerned with the affairs of the world. We need to be focused on. And you can be. You can. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I say, I think I swung the pendulum to the other way for a while. But yeah, I just kind of looked at it as you were a worldly Christian. If you concerned yourself too much with that, you didn't have enough faith in God's sovereignty, etc. You were focused on the wrong thing. You're supposed to be focused on sharing the gospel, not on getting your party in office. And so, that was kind of my attitude towards the whole thing. And I wound up, I understood the historical significance of that moment still, though. It's like, hey, a black man just became president. And my politics had started shifting by that time because I became a Christian. There are just certain things that I knew off the bat. That aligned more with the Democratic Party that I couldn't be down with anymore. I couldn't be okay with. I knew instantly. It's like, all right, man, like we need to stop playing. Abortion's not right. I knew that. I knew instantly that there are other issues of sexuality, et cetera, that I had to take I had to take a certain position on. Because the scripture essentially says, like, hey, this is what truth is. I don't get to decide what truth is. And so I knew that. And so I had started to trend in a more conservative direction, or, which was really just a more Christian direction because of that. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this is showing we've made a ton of progress. And I remember I started to think more about politics a couple years after that, and I wound up meeting my greatest mentor, and he wound up really being able to connect the dots between the scripture and how things should play out and our positions on all kinds of things in life. Is just his ability to really apply the scriptures to every facet of life. I'd never encountered that before. And I didn't really understand what Reformed theology was. I didn't know, I was just like, how does this dude know all this stuff? And he would say stuff and I'm like, that's right. And I was a voracious consumer of the scriptures. When I became a Christian, that was one of the things I read the Bible a lot, a ton. And so, I wound up, meeting this guy and talking about it. And he was able to apply the scriptures to politics. And like I said, I'd already shifted that direction, but I started to see certain things I didn't know how to say for sure, like, hey, this is the position that I should land on as a Christian. He was able to connect the dots, and his political philosophy was based in the scripture. It's the first time I'd ever met somebody who had a solid political philosophy that was based in the scripture, and it was systematic. It wasn't just a, shoot from the hip kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'll say this. This is just also proof that I've been this dude for a long time. This ain't new. This ain't some MAGA Trump thing. Like, no, man, I've been this dude. I switched over 2003. It's probably when I first started to pay attention and realize things.
Yeah.
So I was 22 years old. I just been this dude. And it wasn't like I switched up anything. I've always been this person. I've always had these same beliefs. I just realized I was voting opposite of my beliefs, which is what a vast majority of people in the Black community do, because we have our own views, our own values, and then we go to the voting booth and we vote based on party bias, party loyalty, and largely a race narrative, and then we some way in our mind argue away the cultural things that we're against to legitimize the things we want to vote for from the Democrat Party. Like, oh yeah, racial justice. Yeah, that's what I'm voting for. I'm voting for, us to do this and free healthcare or whatever. And it's like, but all this other stuff on the agenda, like, so you pro choice? It's like, I believe abortion is wrong and I wouldn't do it, but it's like, okay, you believe it's wrong, but you're going to vote for the party that's not just pro-choice, but pro-abortion. Like they're like set up an assembly line in the Black community. Like our population there is half of what it should be based on a racist who wanted to stop us from reproducing and put these places in our neighborhood. And today you vote for that. Like that was the type of stuff. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we voting for this? Why are we expressing our loyalty to a political party that does not align with our values? And that's why I made the switch, And so I didn't switch up anything other than looking, I just switched my vote. I didn't switch positions. I didn't switch anything. And so I've always been the same person, being raised in the Black community, being raised in the Black church. And so, that's where I landed. And so, back in 2008, I was like, man, no more excuses.
Word. Man, that's wild. Because I shifted my opinions. I was definitely more progressive. It was a marked change in the way that I thought, but that happened as a result of me becoming a Christian. And
true, because you weren't raised in the church like I was. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I was not raised. I didn't become a Christian until I was 20 years old.
Okay.
So we'd go to church maybe every now and again, maybe like Easter. There was a period where we went. It was on and off.
You were what we call a CME Christian. Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. That's when you showed up.
Yes. And some of those times was probably because my grandmother, when she was alive, would guilt trip my folks into taking us to church.
Yeah, that's why the M is in there. Mother's Day. Everybody went to church on Mother's Day.
Yep.
You went for Big Mama because Big Mama wanted you to go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And that's what we called her Mama. Everybody called her Mama. Yep. And Mama wanted us to come to church. And so we would go. But that, I didn't grow up in the church. So I definitely had more progressive views. So it shifted. But when I started to realize, like, wait a minute, okay, and I started to learn, I started to dive deep into this stuff after realizing, like, okay, Well, these are the positions that I'm required essentially by God to have on these things, because God doesn't leave truth up to us. And so I start to get deeper in this stuff. Yeah, Mother's Day is coming up. Church attendance up 60%. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. That, but yeah. So I start realizing, like, these are the positions I need to take, and then I start researching. I start getting turned on to Thomas Sowell, and then you get turned on to that Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, there was no coming back.
It's over with. I
Yeah.
took the red pill. I took the red pill and woke up from the Matrix. And then, man, I think that's when the pendulum swung too hard the other way. Because at that point I was angry. I would consider myself, back then, I was a lot like a Candace Owens. I was a lot like a Candace Owens.
You what we call cage stage. Like,
cage stage, bro.
You should be in a cage for a while until you get that out of you, and then you go into public.
Oh, yeah. I thought anytime that anybody expressed a view that was left of me, it was time to drop the octagon, time to get the hands was getting ready to fly. I was angry.
Yeah.
And I was especially angry because I felt like I had been lied to my whole life as a black man. I felt like I'd been lied to my whole life. And I was very angry about that.
I mean, it wasn't a feeling. It was true. And so that's the cultural backdrop for the article and the Obama picture and the no more excuses. But something changed. Right? And the thing I wrote that changed was there was a intentional strategy. It was a political strategy from the Democrats to frame any opposition to Barack Obama as racist, right? If you were against a policy, if you were against, just normal, political opposition that you would normally get, it was always framed was, well, it's because he's black and, America's racist and they don't like a black president. And that was just this narrative they were going with to kind of quiet any opposition to his presidency. And race just started being this thing that got talked about a lot, that it really wasn't before in the news. But 2008, it started getting talked about a lot because of Barack Obama was president. And like I said, that's the way they intentionally framed the opposition. You remember the Tea Party came out in 2010. The Tea Party was just framed as this horrible racist movement. Even though the Tea Party was very, multi-ethnic. You had a lot of people like Allen West, and you had a lot of people like getting elected into office part of the Tea Party that were black and Hispanic. But the narrative was that the Tea Party was this racist movement that rose up in opposition of a black president. That was the narrative, and so it didn't matter if you were against the, Obamacare and you felt like we were moving towards socialism and socialist medicine and all this type of stuff. No, the opposition is because he's black. And so that was the narrative that the Democrats ran with. And we know anytime the Democrats have a message, the media is going to take that message and help amplify it, because the media is in bed of the Democrat Party, the mainstream media, And this was before social media. This was before YouTube. So there was no alternative voices outside of Fox News. There was no alternative voice. So if someone was getting their news, it was CNN, it was MSNBC, it was, the New York Times, it was the Washington Post, it was all of these outlets all pushing the same message. And so that was kind of what we were dealing with. Do you have the video pulled up of the Tea Party video?
You already know, brother. You already know. Let's go to the video.
All right, so this video.
That is nothing but a bunch of tea-bagging rednecks.
Angry at government and racism.
The conservative movement has now crystallized into the white power movement.
Who are into killing blacks and Jews and women or whatever it may be.
I haven't met any racists yet, to be honest with you, not in the Tea Party.
Have you yourself, has anyone accused you of racism for your involvement in the Tea Party?
Today, yes. I've been called a couple of bad words today.
They're a cult. Nazis. Fascist. Un-American.
Racist.
Any opposition you have, any opposition to Obama, to the Democratic Party, anything right now, the way to end any argument, racist.
This is racism straight up.
They say racist, and the argument's over. How can that be?
I mean, there is freedom of speech, but you know, that comes with a responsibility. I think this is dangerous rhetoric.
They're fascist stooges who, in the true sense of that word, that's not hyperbole.
And, you know, we see these hate groups rising up, and this is definitely part of that.
No, I see a lot of anger toward the government, but I don't see any hate. The media has told everyone, these blind, misguided people, that the Tea Party is racist, so that you know, African Americans and other groups and Democrats won't participate in something which would definitely help out their children.
You can't deal with these people at all.
That's what they want to do. They want to categorize us to where we're all fighting each other.
I think they're threatened and they're afraid we're going to win. So they're trying, like, how can we bring it down? Oh, the worst thing you could be in this country is a racist, so let's say that.
This is about hating a black man.
To be honest with you, the first time I heard Obama speak, I thought, there's a guy that knows what he's talking about. He speaks very, very well. But he has converted it to socialism. Take from the people who are working and give to those who aren't.
You are un-American, you are anti-American, you do not love this country, and you are rooting against America.
They see millions of people in this country asking the question among themselves and within their neighborhoods, are these fools in Washington going to wreck our country? And it scared them half to death.
I chose that video because I hope people just like, man, that rhetoric sounds really familiar. It sounds really, that playbook, man, they pulled that playbook right back out. That is the playbook, y'all. Right?
Yeah.
That is the Democratic Party's playbook. Anytime there's opposition to their agenda, they want to slander you as racist, fascist, a threat to America. Like, man, I've heard this before. And like I said, I'm old enough to remember, 2010 was the Tea Party. I considered myself part of the Tea Party. I was highly against Obama's policies. I was highly against the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, I'm like, but no, the opposition was just framed as just racist. That was the strategy. And over time, that had an effect. It had a you can say a positive effect in terms of it was effective to a certain degree, but it had a negative effect as a whole on, I would say, our relationships as Americans, where we should have been at this heightened place of, man, we're past this race thing because look, we just elected a black president, to, oh no, everything is racism. Everything is racist. This place, everybody's just so racist, And then even in 2012, he got reelected. And you would have thought, man, that really kills it. It wasn't a fluke. America really, no. Because 2012, something else happened. 2012, you had Trayvon Martin. And
that's right.
And the creation and start of BLM, right? So even in the midst of that, because remember Obama, Trayvon could have been my son, that whole thing. And so, the racial rhetoric took this uptick. And so I don't know if you can put an article up or if you can pull those, I don't know if you took those, the stats out, the metrics.
Give me one
it's
second
in the article.
and I can pull it up.
Yes. Yeah, so let me pull the article up. So they did a measurement of, they went through the media, New York Times, Washington Post, like the big outlets, and took the words like racist, racism, structural racism, systemic race. They took all of these phrases and said, okay, how often are these words used within their publication? And they started in 2011. So they started before 2012, before Trayvon Martin BLM. And in 2011, it was there, but it was at a very minimum type level. Because like I said, race was in the conversation, but it wasn't just dominating every headline. Starting in 2012, you see the hockey stick. You see it shoot up dramatically from 2012 all the way to, well, we know it's still going on, so I don't know how far the graphic went. But yeah, if you got it, you can pull it up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so you see that? So we were at a somewhat reasonable, so you see some spikes in there, where it kind of pops up every now and then. But man, look out to 2010, which right around 2012. You see that thing just shoot up, right? And this is through 2020. And so it wasn't a coincidence that all of a sudden Americans became very race conscious. It's no coincidence that race relations became worse after Obama's election, after his second term. The media, first of all, we know the Democrat Party tried to use it as their strategy, and then the media carried it. But then after Trayvon Martin, oh my goodness, they just went crazy with it, as if a Hispanic man killing a black kid in Florida was somehow indicative of America. Like it didn't make sense. But they took that incident and they exploited it. Once again, a Hispanic dude, not even a white dude, a Hispanic dude killed a black kid. And it became a white-black narrative. And they exploited it. And of course, the creation of BLM and everything just took off from there. And then there was other incidents. You had, 2014, Mike Brown, Ferguson. You had, of course, you had Kaepernick, but Kaepernick followed the Philando Castile shooting, the Alton Sterling shooting, right? And then 2020 is Floyd. And so they took these incidents and they just exploited them in the media, right? And you also had the creation of social media at the time. So all of a sudden, all this stuff is not only in the print media, it's all over your social media feed, right? And so the consciousness of America just shot through the roof in terms of race. And so instead of being post-racial, which in 2008, that was the declaration, America is now post-racial. We'll pass this thing of race and racism. We went all the way backwards, In the article, I quoted another article that talked about how in 2011, 35% of liberals felt like racism was a major problem. 35, and this is on the left. So 35% of liberals. You can imagine that number is even lower in terms of conservatives. By 2020, the number was 77% of liberals felt like racism was a major problem. That's crazy. It more than doubled. And that's what a black president for 8 years. 2 terms. So how make that make sense other than there's an intentional effort to keep race at the forefront of everyone's mind, to keep racism as in the forefront of everyone's mind, right? To get appearance that we are still under Jim Crow and it's the 1950s, and so that was kind of what I saw working. Is I saw people become more conscious. I saw black people become less hopeful, more fearful, right? Especially in the wake of those shootings, because it was portrayed as if this is what's happening to black people across America. And it wasn't. The numbers never showed that, there was never this epidemic of black men, unarmed black men being killed across America. What they were doing was taking particular incidents, highlighting them, and painting this false narrative to drive people's emotions. That's all they were doing. And as someone who has worked in the intelligence community and understands what propaganda is and see propaganda in all types of other countries, to see it in your own country and see it working was like mind-blowing. Like, you got to be kidding me. They are manipulating people and preying on people's emotions for the sake of political gain. And that has been my message. And some people have not liked it. I've been called every name under the just pointing this out. Like, yo, they playing you, right? But people are so caught up in this black oppression narrative, and to be oppressed is so key to a lot of people's black identity, to where they don't want to hear that they're not. They don't want to hear that their political party that they have dedicated their lives to and their allegiance to is lying to them. When you say you felt lied to, yeah, you had been. And we continue to be, because they benefit from it, right? They benefit from black people being angry and fearful. That's why every 4 years they start rolling this crazy stuff back out. That's why Stacey Abrams will call a voter ID law Jim Crow 2.0, because she knows what that type of language will do to the black person's emotions, right? Joe Biden, no, they're gonna put y'all back in chains, right? Yeah. And it blows my mind how many people that I love and I care for actually ingest this stuff and believe it, right? I'm like, yo, you got to be kidding me. You really think in 20 whatever year it is that you gonna be back in chains? You really think that, and you saw in that clip in 2010, what did he say? Fascist, racist, all the same stuff they say today, right? They've been just saying that stuff ever since then. And it's been effective and people believe it, but there are effects to that. There are consequences of that, right? And the people who pay the most for it is the black community. And that's why I titled my article, "The Black America Was Robbed." We was robbed from, as I said at the end of the article, we were robbed from our emotions and our thoughts aligning the freedom that we already possess, right? It's like I forgot what the syndrome is called, but like you take an animal, you take a dog, and you fence them in, like you put an electric fence there, and they're hindered. If you remove the fence, they're so trained they still stay within the perimeter even without the fence being there. They're free, but they've been so programmed they don't even know they're free. They stay within the confines of the cage. And I feel like that's what the black community is. We are free, but we have not been allowed to believe that we're free. And so we continue on fighting the good fight. We continue on in this oppression narrative, right? And the only people it hurts is us. It holds us back, because other minority groups, including black people from other countries and other nations who come here in the same systemically racist system, are excelling and doing better than white people. So this narrative that the system holds you back because of the color of your skin doesn't add up. No, those people just don't have the limited mindset. They don't have the baggage of this, oh, I'm oppressed because of my skin color, holding them down. Because like I said in the article, man, the greatest oppression is to convince someone that they are oppressed. It's the oppression of the mind, because now I don't even have to oppress you, because you won't even try anymore. You just will believe that you are oppressed, and I don't even have to hold you down, because you're going to hold yourself down, right? With defeating beliefs about yourself and about the environment that you're in. The fence is down, you're free to go, but you stay in the cage. And that's where I feel the community is. And I say people get mad, but some people go, you know what, man, you're right, man. I ain't never thought about that. Or, you know what, you got a point. And so I keep saying it, but then some people like, I'm the coon, I'm the Uncle Tom, I'm the sellout, and it's like, whatever, man. I have been called every name under the sun simply for saying the things that trying to free my people, right? Trying to free you from this manipulation that someone has you under. And I ain't even saying you got to come vote Republican or you got to anything like that. I'm saying stop letting these people gaslight you. Stop letting these people manipulate your emotions. Stop going to see slave movies. We did not need a remake of The Color Purple. There is more to black people than oppression and slavery and Jim Crow. Right? Every movie about black people is about us overcoming, 12 Years a Slave, The Color Purple remake, The Butler, all of these movies, man. It's like, and then we go see it. It's like, oh man, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's like oppression porn, and we love it. We hooked on it. We're addicted to it because our identity is rooted in it. And then we leave out of those movies. No, we are mad at white people all over again. Like we can't move on. We can't heal, and they make sure we don't heal because they keep feeding us this stuff. They keep putting in our entertainment. They put it in our politics every day. You watch Joy Reid. You listen to Ricky Smiley. You listen to you listen to black content. That's all it is. It's all it is. And at the same, people are just fleecing you, making money, making so much money. It's like BLM talking about how bad white people were, but yeah, buying houses and mansions in white neighborhoods. Come on, man. They playing y'all. But then when I say it, I'm the bad guy, you know? And so that's kind of been my argument from the beginning once I saw it happening and I started speaking out against it, you know, but some people are so rooted in their quote unquote blackness that to tell them that the fight is over, that we won, is like bad news to them, which is sad. It's sad to say, man, you know what? The civil rights movement was successful. You know, the shaming, the cultural shaming that racism was wrong has been successful. You know, we told white people that colorblindness was where they're supposed to be, to judge somebody not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And then around 2020, we decided that colorblindness was racist too. Like how we do that? You know, so they racist if they acknowledge race. They're racist if they don't acknowledge race. Like at some point we got to realize, y'all, this is a game. This is a game. And so that's what the article was about. It was basically about just how we've been robbed from the ability to participate in America as everyone else, you know, and it's not that there's any particular thing holding us back. It is our own emotions and self-defeating thoughts and beliefs that hold us back. Right. And so we had a prime opportunity, 2008, to overcome that hump and to have a different direction for the black community. And instead, they made sure we stayed in our place. They made sure that we didn't get over that because they used that thing every 4 years to drive us to the polls. And if they had lost that stick or that carrot, you know, then the Democrat Party, which relies heavily on the black vote to get elected, they cannot win elections if they don't get, 90% of the black vote. Right. And so it was in their best interest to keep us in that place. And they did. And here we are, 2025. And we have the mindset of 1955, and it's just sad. It is just sad. So,
yeah,
I've ranted, man. So, what are your thoughts?
No, that was good, man. That was good. I was like, oh man, we getting some clips out of this. The whole time I'm like, cha-ching, we get some clips out of this right here. Oh man, but no, man, I think that was well said, man. I think that one of the things that you touched on that was really important to me, I just want to jump back to the graphic real quick. I noticed the same thing. It was so fascinating when and really kind of vindicating when I saw this information come out, because I noticed the same thing. I noticed that I did not hear people talking about racism and race nearly as much, until we got to around Obama's second term. We got to Obama's second term.
Think about it. The idea of systemic racism wasn't in anybody's vocabulary, or this idea that racism was now prejudice plus power. Like, that was not in anybody's vocabulary. When somebody said racist, they meant you are prejudiced against somebody because of the color of their skin. That's all racist was. And racism was, that's all it was. But now it's like, oh no, black people can't be racist because we don't have power. Racism is prejudice plus power. And it's a system. And that's post 2012, man. Before that, nobody was saying that stuff. People in the black community weren't talking about no systemic racism.
Right. Right. I wasn't hearing about that before then. Hey, by the way, the other side, first of all, thank you for watching. Second of all, thank you for being another voice out there.
For real.
It can get
For real.
lonely out in these streets, man. It can get lonely out in these streets. Because you probably know you catch heat. You catch heat when you say this stuff. I'm probably gonna catch some heat for saying this stuff tonight. But I mean, it needs to be said. And for the same reason as the title that Kevin gave to the article, because I agree that black people have been robbed of their freedom mentally, and it's just there are a lot of things that I could say about this, but I'll hop back to the fact that I remember when it changed. I remember, in the corporate world, I was working in the corporate world. I remember the vibe shift back then when all of a sudden it was okay to be racist against white people. All of a sudden we were talking about systemic oppression way more. All of a sudden, we had not made any progress since Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
all this stuff people started saying.
Racism hasn't changed; it just morphed and shifted in a different way, but it's still just as prominent today as it was then.
Right?
It's like, really?
Right. And then you had what's the name? It wasn't like they hadn't been saying this for a while, but school to prison pipeline. That book and the author and everybody who kind of believed that, it just shifted. It went from slavery to prison and all this stuff. And so again, I'm not saying they weren't saying it. I'm saying that they didn't carry any sway with people in the public square until that time. I'm
saying Natalie's right, because Natalie's saying she heard it in law school and stuff like that. These ideas existed in academia. Absolutely. So you went to law school, or if you got a degree in sociology, you heard these things. But in the mainstream, in mainstream media, or just in the streets, in the community, you didn't hear these terms, right?
Right.
And so, this was, it went from this academic fringe thing to all of a sudden it is the mainstream narrative for what America is. Now everybody understands it, believes it, holds to it. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah. No, I mean that, and you're right. That's absolutely what happened. Is what was happening in academia started to get out into the culture. These ideas that previously they would have been, people would have been like, nah, like it, systemic oppression is not a thing anymore, but you have
or we would have just said, what is that?
What is that?
Like,
right.
It just wasn't anybody's vocabulary. Nobody knew what that was.
It was
racism was something I faced. Racism was a person that, that called me the N-word, or that held me from getting a job. It was a person. Then it became a faceless system that just exists with not anybody around it, nobody behind it. It doesn't even have to be a racist person, because now it's unconscious bias, right? Well, they don't even know it. It's just like, and so it just went. We deified racism. It became omnipresent. It became all powerful. It was like, man, this thing is a god that you can't even get away from, and that's the weight that black people feel. Right. And that's intentional. Racism is everywhere. Who was that? No, it was what was her name that wrote White Fragility? What's her name?
Is it Robin DiAngelo?
Yeah, Robin DiAngelo.
Yeah.
Talking about when an incident happens, and I know she didn't come up with, I heard her say it. When an incident happens, it's not if racism occurred, it's how did racism occur. So it's implied in everything, right? We just have to have the eyes to see it. So it's not a matter of if racism occurred, it's how did it occur, right? And so people started finding racism in everything, because the premise, the underlying premise that people started to believe was that racism was everywhere. It was endemic. It was in the system. It was in everybody's unconscious bias actions, right? It was just this thing that no one could overcome, and it was just like, this is nuts, y'all. this is just crazy. But the amount of people who believed it, right, especially in the Black community, and now what does that do for you if you're Black? How, do you have hope, or does that drive hopelessness? And my point was, man, this thing drives hopelessness because how can you get away from that, right? And every time something happens, every time there's an incident like a George Floyd, right, it's automatically this is just because I got a buddy, Black guy, progressive, believes all of this stuff to the T. Critical race theory. Every news clipping is simply proof of his ideology, right? So imagine a country of 350 million people. 40 plus million of those people are Black. Imagine how many news stories and incidents across the country of anybody at any given time. Imagine that any negative thing that happens to a Black person is simply of your ideology. You will be forever have evidence. Always going to be a news story. There's always going to be some negative thing that happened to a Black person that lives in a country of over 300 million people and with 40 million Black people. Something's going to happen. Somebody got said the N-word to, somebody got killed. It's always going to be something. And so when you just go by news clippings, right, and you've created this narrative and now your social media feed is feeding you particular narratives and particular headlines and clippings, yeah, it doesn't really exist, but it exists in your mind because it's in your social media feed, right? And so no matter how much I try to tell them that, I'm like, bro, stop sending me articles. Of course something happened. Yeah. Like, I could send you an article that something happened to a white person. Does that mean that white people are facing, just stop with the news clippings.
Right.
That's
one of the things that I have such a problem with, because I know a lot of people not gonna like me saying this, but one of the things that I think happens now is there are two things I need to say here. One, let's remove the media talking about it. And when I say the media, I mostly mean cable news media, because generally, local news is not talking about this stuff like that. It's generally the cable news talking heads that are talking about this stuff all the time, and your major, left-leaning publications like the New York Times, like the Washington Post. Even though WAPO's actually gotten, they've gotten better over the last couple of years, surprisingly. But if we remove that, and you are forced to just look at the real world, show me where the systemic oppression is. That's my question to everybody who swears that it's still real. Show it to me. Let's go fight it together, as Ben Shapiro would say. If you can show it to me, let's go fight it together. But
I had friends, man. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My problem is that nobody has been able to show me anything significant. Nobody's been able to show me anything of any real significance. And hey, if you got something, send it in. informedtakes@gmail.com. Send it in. If you got something, drop a comment. If you're watching, send an email, informedtakes@gmail.com. But I'm just saying, I've never had somebody demonstrate to me real systemic oppression. They've been able to demonstrate to me anecdotal instances of somebody being potentially oppressed, right? We do have point in time issues. I think, quite personally, that the instance of Ahmaud Arbery, that one right there, that one did scare me a little bit, because I live in Georgia. That happened in Georgia. And I was like, yo, those dudes were so brazen to decide they were going to kill off a young black man in broad daylight and do an old school, basically, kind of old school lynching, as it were, in broad daylight, chase him down in their truck, with the shotgun, all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, that
it was right from a Jordan Peele movie.
It was, dude. It was wild. I was like, dude. But then what happened though? What happened? Those dudes, I mean, do they even exist anymore? Them dudes, are they alive? You know what I'm saying? Like, because they got wiped off of the face of the earth, man. They're
in prison forever. They're not gonna. Yeah, they're in prison. They're done.
Not only are they in prison forever, but the person who tried to sweep it under the rug, and that right there, that one, okay, that's one where I'm like, okay, you want to talk about systemic oppression? Maybe in that town, if that official was able to pull that in that town, there might be an issue in that town, needs to be looked at. But you can't show that to me everywhere in the country. And it was such a thing that we essentially, the magnifying glass was on that little town in Georgia, and everybody who had anything to do with trying to cover this thing up or trying to give some special treatment to those guys, all of them got lit up. They all got lit up. If it was systemic oppression, that would not happen.
Yeah.
It would not happen. Now, am I saying that every ounce of systemic oppression is removed from the country in totality? No, because you saw that instance. You've heard of some things that actually were happening in what was it? Michael Brown's town, was it Ferguson, Missouri. You heard about some things that were happening in that town. I can't even say for a fact that there was systemic oppression down there, but there was a history of certain things happening. So I'm saying, could you find some things if you went to some small town? Maybe. Yeah, you maybe could. That small town here in Georgia, yeah, you probably could find a little something. But you're not going to find anything where you can justify the teaching of critical race theory in higher education across the board at our elite universities and institutions. There's nothing where you can justify CRT even existing based on those point examples. Those
because this is the issue. This is the point. Because you can argue all day that something exists. Absolutely exists. It's like, show me murder exists. Yeah, it's always going to be a murder. It's always theft. It's always going to be, these things will always exist. There's no such thing as we must eliminate all murder. That's just not going to happen. You can't eliminate all murder. You can't eliminate all racism. But the point was, to what extent is systemic racism an issue? To what extent does it prevent people of color from exceeding in America today? And I have said this from the beginning. This is like my putting my analyst hat on. Whenever I see these articles talking about systemic oppression, they have the same pattern, right? They will talk about some historical oppression, and then they will transition to some current disparity, right?
Yes.
And the systemic oppression is never proven. They've just tied it to a historical narrative, whether it's Jim Crow or whatever, or redlining, whatever it may be. And now they show some statistical disparity, right, between blacks and whites. And it's always just blacks and whites. And why is that? There's a lot more people in this country other than blacks and whites.
Right.
Because this is why. When you throw all the data together, when you throw all the people groups into the data and look at the data and say, okay, is the system systemically racist? You can't find, the narrative doesn't work, right? Because when they try to do black and white, they try to show, oh, whites are here and here's where blacks are and this is because of historical blah, blah, blah. But then when you throw all the other groups in it, you realize, oh no, whites aren't here. Whites are actually here, right? The data doesn't show that the system is systemically racist in favor of whites and against people of color. That's not what it shows, So, for example, they'll talk about, infant mortality rates between blacks and whites, and this disparity is because of systemic racism within the medical field. But then you go look, and Hispanics' infant mortality rate and Asian infant mortality rate is lower than whites. It's like, what are we doing? The narrative falls apart once you get away from a black-white paradigm. And I have been trying to tell people that stop falling for these sham articles and studies that only want to make it about a black-white paradigm. Yeah, the black community, we got issues, right? We don't do as well as white people. Right. Is that because of systemic? The evidence doesn't show that, right? Because if that was the case, then all these other groups would be in the same boat, but they're not. So what is it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm just gonna give the answer because I don't want anybody to think, oh, black people just inferior to white people. No, the issue is culture. Culture is the driving force, you know. And I'm not gonna go into my spiel, but just know the answer is culture. The answer is not that there's something wrong with black people. The issue is the things that we believe, prioritize, and value produces a certain outcome, right? We talk about, you know, health, you know, things of health and all this type of stuff in the black community. Yeah, because look at soul food. Look how we eat. Like, don't tell me about diabetes affecting black people's racism when we up there putting all this stuff in our food. When I'm up here got my 7 toe.
7 toes, man. You making a conscious decision. At least you are making a conscious decision. You're not going to blame that on anybody but yourself.
And let me take a sip of this racism.
Man, while you taking a sip of that, let me give a shout out to the elder statesman DWC in the building. He said the more you meditate on the small differences, the worse you'll feel. Now, I will say I was looking at some stats this afternoon, just kind of in preparation for the show. You know, now that we've got AI that can do deep research, it's able to, you know, pull up some stuff, and I can check the sources and all that. And there's a wide gap between the median household income of a black person versus a white person. White people are actually in third place. They come in behind Asians, and Asians come in behind Indians. Indians have the highest median income in this country, and they have for the last 2 years. Maybe longer than that, actually.
And you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy, though? Because they did the same study in England, right? And I've seen it also here in America, like the income thing, right? When we say Asian, that's a broad group, right? When you break it down to where they come from in Asia, there are disparities there, right? Because they have different cultures, right?
Yes.
And so this idea that is all like the system is set up for certain people to succeed based on race and all this, that's just not true. It's culture, and where you come from matters, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I will, and look, you know, because one of the things that the spirit of this show is that we want to represent the arguments of each side properly. And one of the things that I know, you know, somebody who may be watching this or listening to this may say is that, you know, the racism is seen in the disparity, right? The effects of the past are why the disparities exist. And so there are two things that I will say to that. You're actually not you're not completely wrong on that. The disparities do exist in part to a pretty good degree due to the history of the country. We're only what now are we 1964 I guess was 61 years ago.
Yep, 61. Yep.
Yeah. So we're, you know, my dad lived through Jim Crow, right? My dad's got stories of stuff that was done to him and to my grandfather down here in the South. Dad lived, he saw that stuff, right? We're not so far removed from it that the effects of it can't be seen. So I will say the effects are still seen. We're not trying to say that the effects aren't still seen. However, we are saying that the things that were there are not there anymore. The culture has changed dramatically. Even even 30 years past the civil rights movement, 30 years past the civil rights movement, the culture had changed dramatically to where my father could not walk around with a white girlfriend safely in the South. Like, real stories behind that, right? To, you know, in the 90s, no problem, right? There's all kinds of stuff, and I'm not saying that there weren't still some issues even in the 90s, but we've been on a positive trajectory to the point that, again, if we talk about Barack Obama getting elected, there's some people who would say to me, don't you ever bring that up as an example that racism is not an issue in America anymore. I've had that said to me. It is an example that racism is not an issue because we only make up somewhere between 12 and 13% of the population. So that means that everybody else, over 80% of the population had to decide that a black man was qualified to be the president of the United States, and they did it twice.
Yep.
They did it twice. Even some who would probably found themselves disagreeing with him on policy to a degree during his first term chose to put him back in office. Some of those same people voted for Trump.
Yep.
And so you can't say it's because it's racist, because those people put him in office twice. They put Barack Obama in office 2 times. So you can't say that those people are racist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like they will always make the argument, you know. A person can have a black spouse, and today's sociologists and critical theorists will still say, well, that doesn't mean they're not racist.
Right. Right.
So you can't win with these people, man. They're not going to let it go. They're not going to let it go. But you brought up something about, you know, the numbers proving it out and the historical. And I get it makes sense. Like, man, if you had this people that was held down to this point and these people had a head start, it's going to be obvious that, you know, you're going to have this disparity in wealth and stuff, except that's not really how wealth works. Have you ever read or heard Dave Ramsey talk about the study of millionaires they did? They did the largest study of millionaires ever for his book that he wrote. And they interviewed 10,000 millionaires, right, to talk about how they became millionaires and stuff. What they found out was that 80% of millionaires are first-generation millionaires. And of that 80%, the vast majority, I think it was over 80% of them did not receive like any kind of like major inheritance. They didn't have like any kind of like big head start on someone else, right? They just, you know, they had certain principles that they lived by, and over time they became millionaires, you know. And I'm talking about the person that has $1.5 million in their 401k. You know, their house is paid off, right? I'm talking about those. I'm not talking about Uber. I'm not talking about Elon Musk, right? The vast majority of millionaires are through the stock market and their house, right? And so when you look at that, the thing is that what they found out is when it comes to wealth, by the second or third generation, because the people who didn't earn it, inherit it, they lose it, right? Money don't just stay there, man. Money is fluid. That thing flows, right? And so it's not like, oh, all of these people are just constantly staying rich and wealthy because some kind of way in the 1940s, you know, they had something. Like, no, those families, those people tend to lose that wealth over time because generations come along who didn't earn it and they lose it. They blow it, right? And then someone else comes along and starts a business or, you know, saves in their 401k. You know, they were a school teacher for 30 years, was faithful in their 401k, lived below their means and became a millionaire, right? Those are the type of people, when we talk about this data and the wealth gap and stuff, that's what most of it is, right? And they've talked about, like, if you remove like the top, like uber rich, like if you remove Elon Musk, Bezos, no, those type of people, there really isn't a gap. Right. There really isn't. It almost erases itself. And And so those things of it needs to be a deeper analysis of the data other than saying, oh, it's a disparity. Oh, this is because of historical wrongs. It doesn't, that's not really how wealth and money flows and operates, right? And so once you realize that, you realize there's no reason other than choices that more Black people today aren't in a better financial situation, right? We made choices. There's no reason that what we call the Black community today. There's no reason the property value in the Black community today is as low as it is. It's like that because nobody wants to live there, not because of systemic racism. It's because now we bugged out, you know. And so yeah, it just takes people looking a little bit deeper, other than these really really simple arguments that sound like they make sense, but when you really dive into it, don't really line up with the narrative. The data doesn't line up with the narrative, right? But man, so that was the article I wrote. It was on my mind. I had to spit it out. I was like, man, we got robbed, man. We had a chance to mentally and emotionally turn a corner in America, and instead, man, we got kicked down even harder, and now we're in a worse place we were then before he got elected. So I miss the 90s.
Yeah, man. We were listening to some 90s music. Had a friend over, a client who's a friend of ours was staying with us last week, and we were listening to some 90s music, and I understood, man. I understood, my parents like listening to, 70s music and wanting to be able to relive some of that, there was parts of me that's like I was having specific memories tied to certain songs. Like, man, I wish I could relive that memory one time. I think that
no, we the old guys now. We're like, man, they don't make music like they used to.
I know. Oh man, it's like I used to. I said while we were sitting there listening to that music, I used to not allow myself to just fully feel the nostalgia, because that meant I was old. That meant I was like, oh no, that means I'm like an old person who like is stuck in a different era and is not keeping up with the times. But now I don't care no more, man. You can call me Unc, you can call me old, man. There's some good music coming out today, but I'm sorry, man. There's just some stuff that just don't make it like they used to, man.
I saw this reel, and it was like it was like hip hop songs came out in 1999. And 1999, that's the year I graduated high school. So I'm like, okay, what came out in 99? And man, it was like, what's the best song? And they played like 10 songs. I was like, man, they were all, I don't know which one was the best. Like, I can't believe all those songs came out the same year. Like, it was crazy.
99, man. 99, 2000, 2001. I mean, just there was stuff like I remember going to Myrtle Beach with my buddies and stuff, and the stuff you would hear people bumping out of their car on the strip. Like, it was just, I don't know, the stuff that made it to the top 40 back then. I just feel like it was built different, man.
We're so old. Different. We are so old.
We old. Hey, cheers.
We are
cheers.
Reminiscing
about
the
good man.
Reminiscing about the good old days of the 90s.
That's right. But one last thing I'll say on this whole topic, and I give some final thoughts at the end of the show, because I do have a message to people. But I just want people to let go of whatever what this hurt or
resentment, bitterness,
and bitterness. When we start to dive into some of these things, we start to talk about these things, you can strike a nerve. Some comments that you made on some stuff dealing with the Black church struck a nerve with some folks. And it was evident that it had struck a nerve. It was evident it struck a nerve, and the response bore out that they weren't really responding to the content of the original statement.
They're just emotions.
It was stuff that was coming up, and it really did to me. I'm not saying for sure, but it really did to me seem like those brothers have some resentment that they've got to deal with. They've got to deal with that. And I don't understand. It's hard for me to understand why. If you look at the way that the world is now, you can hold on to that stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How can even, especially if you didn't live through some of the real stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like some of the stories my dad told me of the stuff that he dealt with, folks our age, most of them have not dealt with anything like that. So when it's folks that are our age and younger who have more resentment than folks who are older than them, when they haven't really seen the kind of in your face systemic, like on the law books oppression, they haven't seen that, but they have this resentment, and it feels like we've gone backwards. Like you said, it feels like we've gone backwards decades as far as sentiment and relations. And it's causing old stuff to pop back up that wasn't really a thing when I was growing up, you know?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It's hard for me because I did have, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I've had the chance to live in another country that was majority black, right?
You ain't gotta say majority. It was all black.
Right. I mean, like I said, I think I said it last week. I could count on one hand how many times I saw a white person in the several years that I was there. And I came back to the States, and the people who treated me the worst were actually black folks. It wasn't the white folks. And I was living in the South. I was in South Carolina. But the people who treated me the worst were actually black folks. And it caused me to change my view. It didn't cause me to become, racist against black people. It just caused me to realize, like, hey, I need to not try to ride with people just because they look like me. Mm-hmm. I need to ride with who shares my values, who shares my interests. And that changed the way that I looked at it. And I never felt like coming up that anybody was trying to hold me down. I never felt that way. In my career, I've never felt like anybody was trying to hold me down because of being black.
They tried. They failed.
Right. If they tried, it didn't work, man. If they tried, it didn't work. It was to the point, man, to be honest with you, back in 2016, man, it just felt like if you were black, you could get in a spot, and I know a lot of people going to get mad at me for saying that, but I know, because I've had conversations with the HR people, okay? I know that they were given preference, okay?
Look,
was real.
I work for a university, and I joke all the time. Like, we'll be having an office meeting, and we'll have an issue come up that we're trying to handle or solve with another department or college or something, and I'd be like, yo, y'all want me to use my black privilege? Like, I can go in there and say it, and they can't say nothing to me.
That's right. That's right. I mean, let's go. I mean,
and everybody knows, but it's real at the same time.
It's real. It was real. It ain't real no more. I don't know. I think we've worn it out. The moral authority is worn out.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
DEI and CRT did that thing in. So if you were riding on that wave, I'm trying to tell you, your number's up. But and I think that's actually a good thing. But
it is.
Yeah. But that's my thing, man. Is just I never saw that. It got to the point in 2016. I thought I was worried when I was offered a promotion. Pretty soon after I took a job at a company, I was offered a pretty big promotion. And I was worried because we were in the thick of that stuff where they were, all the companies were trying to make sure they had a black person in leadership and all that stuff. And I remember asking my boss, we were taking a walk downtown. I was living in North Carolina at the time. And I remember I was specifically trying to ask my boss questions, but not let on that I was trying to find out if I was getting promoted just because I was black.
Trying to figure you the token.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, yo, if y'all are giving me this promotion just because I'm black, I'm going to turn it down. That's because I was going to stand 10 toes down. I was going to stand 10 toes down. If y'all are giving me this promotion because I'm black, I will not take it just to send a message. And I asked him a few questions, and then he stopped me. He's like, "Do you think that I'm giving you this promotion just because you're black?" And I'm like, "Well, I saw some kind of, some things kind of happening to the company. I started to wonder a little bit." He's like, "Just so you know, I'm never going to give you anything just because you're black." I'm like, all right, we cool.
All right, we good then. We good.
And we still friends to this day.
Yeah. Man, but that's what it's about, man. And so, oh man, I just want people, I want to say black people and white liberals, because they are caught up in this too.
Yeah.
I just want them to be free. I want black people to be free of this oppression, and I want white liberals to be free of this guilt they're walking around with.
Yes.
Like, let it go. Like Elsa. Like Elsa said, let it go. Sing the song.
Let it go. Let it go.
Look, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are a white liberal, I appreciate you listening. I want you to know this. I know how to use the internet. I have an ID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Like,
I got a computer.
I know how to get to the
laptop.
DMV. Yeah, I know what a laptop. I know what a computer is.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
We good. We good.
Lord of mercy. Yeah. No, yeah. That whole, I will say on that, you got to be careful, because some of these white liberals, they're not really in it for black people or whatever oppressed group that it's the oppressed group of the weak. They're not in it for them. And it's something that I debated on whether I would bring it up or not. They are in it because they see racial tension as an opportunity to upend the cultural order and the legal order, the governmental order in the United States. And that's not tinfoil hat. It's well documented that this has been a strategy by our political enemies, foreign and domestic, for decades. Ever since it was actually ever since the civil rights movement, ever since and really ever since the 50s.
Even before then.
Yeah.
I'll just say what you're trying to say. The Soviets had decided that the Soviets and the Marxists, let's just say that, had decided the weak link in America wasn't class, it was the black-white racial. And so they recruited the black community really heavily to kind of create their own proletariat, right?
Yes.
Black grievances and all that type of stuff. And they created basically Marxist activists within the black community. And so that's been a thing for a long time, is to exploit the black-white tensions in America to force cultural and social change. That's what you're trying to say. Without saying it.
I was trying to say it without saying it. But that, I mean, for everybody who gets tired of us using the word Marxism and all that stuff, essentially what they want to do is they want to implement a system where the government has way more control over the freedom that you have to move, the freedom that you have to make a better life for yourself, to speak, to defend yourself, etc. And they know that American culture is naturally sort of an antibody to, it is antimatter to a Marxist mindset.
Yeah, we're individualistic, we're go-getters, we're less government, don't tread on me, bro. That type of mindset is not very good for trying to push a collectivist agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what it comes down to. It is individual liberty, which this country is built on, and that's not the same thing as isolationism or the quote unquote rugged individualism that says that I don't have any responsibility to my neighbor whatsoever.
No,
that is not the same thing. Individual liberty is to protect from tyranny. That concept is to protect from tyranny, and our government is built on that to make sure that tyranny can't be a thing here.
Yeah.
And so we've come dangerously close to the line a couple of times in our history. And, the attempt to try to implement some of this stuff, I'm not going to go into a left-right dichotomy right now, but I will say that those who have a collectivist mindset, they are willing to use whatever means necessary to try to get this done. They're willing to use whatever means necessary. So I will say that I will say that you have to. I want you to take a step back and look at when they start talking about race, when they start talking about racial oppression, when they start talking about issues facing minorities and especially black folks in this country. Look at some of the language that they're using. When they start talking about systemic oppression, when they start talking about unconscious bias, when they start talking about capitalism being the culprit, that stuff, I'm here to tell you, that stuff is part of a strategic, targeted effort that has been going on for decades in this country to try to move us to a more collectivist mindset. And here's why that's bad. Collectivism says that you can't make it on your own and be able to have a right to your property. It is the collective that gets to decide whether you have a right to have a thing or not, to do a thing or not,
I want to jump in,
thing or not.
Because it's not just collectivism. It's collectivism through the power of government, right? Because you can have collectivism in your community, your family. Collectivism exists in any culture. This is about through the power and force of government.
Well
right?
said. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that is the distinction. That is a distinction because there's a time and a place for collectivism in the sense that we are going to pool resources and help each other, that we are going to make sure that everybody in our group is taken care of. There are times and places for that. It must always be voluntary. A lot of people like to bring up the book of Acts in the scriptures where the saints sold all their stuff and they had all things common. Notice that it was voluntary. It was not forced. And the apostles reinforced that when Ananias and Sapphira decided to lie and pretend like they were selling all their stuff and giving all the money to the church. They said, wasn't it your property? Didn't you have the right to do with it whatever you wanted? So why are you coming here pretending to do this in front of everybody and lie to the Holy Spirit, right? So
their sin was lying. Their sin was not selling everything they had.
Boom. That's right.
Yes.
And again, it's reiterated right there. The apostle said it. It was yours to do with it what you wanted, and it's
private property rights.
Boom. And it's in the Old Testament. Look at the Old Testament. In Old Testament theocratic Israel, property rights were a thing, even to the point that the king did not have a right over your personal property. King Ahab sinned when he wanted Naboth's vineyard. He wanted Naboth's vineyard, and he sinned because he was trying to get that thing. Naboth didn't want to sell it to him because it belonged to his family. He didn't want to sell it out to family, and Jezebel killed him for it.
Hello, they pulled an eminent domain and took his vineyard. Man.
They did, baby. They did. Yeah. And so, the force of the federal government coming and deciding, okay, yeah, you can't do this thing because it's not for the good of the people, right? And that is what we're talking about when we talk about collectivism versus individual liberty. Watch for the language when they talk about race, and you will see that it's baked in there. You'll see that it's a part of the agenda. They pushing that stuff. especially if you hear him start talking about capitalism. I'm telling you where it's coming from.
Yeah. And so, so a part of what I wrote in the article about how they use the black community, that is a part of it. I didn't write that, and I wasn't going to go there because that just turns people off, like especially reading it. But yeah, that is a major part of it in terms of the use of the black community, the use of the LGBTQ community. You have to build your proletariat. No, we call it cultural Marxism, right? You move away from the class. That's why people keep saying, man, the Democrat Party used to be the party of the working class, right? They used to stand up for they abandoned class because their Marxism abandoned class, right? And they went from class to identity. And that's why we jumped into identity politics, because their proletariat was no longer based on class. It was based on identity groups they could push together to build a coalition, right?
Yes.
And so once people understand it from a political standpoint, because they use those terms all the time, identity politics. Oh, it used to be the part of the working class, but they don't tie that shift to a shift in a Marxist understanding or Marxist strategy of moving from class to identity to build your proletariat.
That's right.
Man, you done went down this tinfoil hat route, and so I gotta give a shout out, man. This week, our boys Virgil Walker and Daryl Harrison dropped a new podcast episode.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say this real slow because I want y'all to write it down or go Google it. If you're not familiar with the Just Thinking podcast, you got to check it out. So Virgil and Daryl, each episode is like 3 hours long, and they don't put an episode out very often because they do a lot of research before they do an episode. And so it's always just heavy and rich. This one was on the education system and the foundations and start of the education system. And in the profile pic, there's two pictures. There's one of Dewey and there's one of Marx. And once you listen to them, you're going to understand why. I remember years ago when I found out Dewey was a Marxist, I was like, you got to be kidding. Like, I grew up learning about the Dewey Decimal System and all this type of stuff. I had no idea this dude was a flaming Marxist.
Yeah,
you know, and he's known for a lot more in our education system than just the Dewey Decimal System. But yeah, if you check out the Just Thinking podcast, why did public education started? It was all started under this idea of producing social change agents, I guess you can say. That's the language I would use. From a state-run perspective, right? It was no longer about transferring knowledge. It was no longer about the teacher, just transferring knowledge to the students. It came about how do we mold and shape our students, which was who's molding and who's shaping, and is that the purpose of education? I thought the purpose of education was knowledge, right? And truth, discovering truth and knowledge. It's like, no, we got to shape these kids. It's like, no, that's that was at home and at church. No, you got your identity and you got shaped through your family and through your church. School was it was just education. That was knowledge. It was learning 2 + 2 is 4. They was like, no, we're missing an opportunity to shape children, right? And so that was the whole push to this collectivist state-run education system, public education. And so once you understand that, and they do a great job of original sources, reading the quotes, like, you're like, man. And so we keep saying, man, what's wrong with our education system? How did it get so bad? And it's because the purpose of it isn't knowledge. It isn't knowledge, and you got all this stuff today, social and emotional learning, SEL, all this type of stuff. It has nothing to do with academics. It has nothing to do with actual knowledge or seeking truth or discovering truth. It's all social engineering and shaping of young people through a particular ideological lens.
Yeah.
So
yeah. To bring it home on this topic, I do want to read that quote from your article that I had posted up. It says, "More black people believe systemic racism is a major problem today, although many of them will say it hasn't affected them personally. They believe they're speaking up for others who are oppressed, but no one knows who these oppressed people are. We're just told they exist, and disparities in certain areas of American life between blacks and whites are the proof of it. Well said, brother.
Man,
well said,
I
brother.
now know why you got flack.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's the quote you put out. Oh, snap.
But
man.
Dude, I've been saying it for years. I'm just like, dude, like, who oppressed? Who's oppressed? I don't know. I don't know anybody who's oppressed. I haven't seen it. I mean, you figure you live long enough, right? You live into your 40s. And at some point, if it's real, you got to come across it, right? And I'm not saying, maybe you don't, okay? Maybe you don't. But somebody you know has to have come across it, and they ought to be able to point you to it. But I haven't seen that, man. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, because it's funny, because nobody wants to say that like in their life, because usually these people you're talking to are successful. You know, they're middle class, you know, they got, 2 cars in the driveway, they got a house in the suburbs. So you're talking to them, and he's like, so man, so tell me how has systemic racism, stopped you from achieving in life? Well, it ain't about me. It ain't about me, I'm like, well, who is it about? Who we talking about? It's never them. It's never their own experiences. It's never, stopped them from achieving, but everybody is speaking up for these mythical people that exist that are oppressed, and no one knows who they are, So yeah, I just wrote it because that's just been my experience. You talk to people, and every single time they back away when you try to get them to talk about their personal, okay, well, how has it held you back?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Every single time they back off. It's like, well, it's not about me.
And you know what?
Every
I think
time.
part of that is because of the efforts by the Soviets, et cetera. And we black people were struggling, and we were looking for an answer to our struggle. And unfortunately, a lot of us went towards that collectivist mindset because of that. As a mode of self-preservation, and we started to believe in it politically as well. And I think that some of why we hold on to this idea that it's somebody, or the disparities are evidence of it, is that collectivist mindset that, like, well, until most of us have made it, we ain't made it. And the reality is that the way that the world is, we live in a fallen world. The reality is most of us ain't gonna make it. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
This is one of those things. This is how I look at it. This is how I explain it. LeBron James and Oprah being billionaires has no effect on me or my life. Absolutely none. Neither does Pookie and Ray Ray and them, making minimum wage affect my life. Like, so looking at these large stats and disparities, it don't mean anything, right? It's about individual agency. And so, it just doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of what you can achieve just because some broad numbers. Like I said, even if it was like the vast majority of billionaires today are black, I'm not. Like it that don't change my bank account. It don't change like it just doesn't change anything.
They ain't paying my bills.
Exactly.
They ain't paying my bills, man. When the light bill got to get paid, LeBron ain't over here.
Hey, I got some white people in the chat. Elon Musk being the richest man in the world. How does that affect you?
Yeah, how's that helping you out?
It doesn't. So like these collectivist numbers of black wealth and white, it just doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't. It don't mean anything for you.
Right.
You still got to go out and achieve and do.
Right.
Right.
The question to ask is anybody holding you back from achieving and doing? Is anybody holding you back from that? Because the outcome being different is not necessarily an indication of oppression. The question is anybody actively holding you back from achieving and doing? And if not, then you need to start looking at what you can do with what you have and stop thinking that it's because somebody was trying to hold you back. If you can't point to it, I'm gonna go ahead and say just try, man.
Yeah, I like the Scooby-Doo meme. And it's like, now we're going to finally see who's been holding us back, who's been holding me back. And they pull the mask off as a picture of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I'm with you on that, Katie. And the government. Yeah, stop taxing me, man. But yeah, so that's, that's basically, that's the last thing I wanted to get out there. It's just,
man,
if you can't see it, if it ain't holding you back, just go out there and do it, man. Just go out there and do it.
Yeah. I've been sitting here thinking the whole time, because I was just letting it ride. I was like, man, we rolling now. Let's just go with it. We're going to never get to that video, man.
Man, if you got time, let's do it. If you got time, let's do it. I'm game.
I got time.
Let's ride.
I got time.
Let's ride.
All right, let's do it then.
All right. Let me cue this up. Let's do it.
All right. So before we start, I gotta cue it up, let people know what we're talking about. So if you guys aren't familiar with the Native Land podcast, it is a very progressive, and I say progressive because they're self-professed progressive. I'm not just throwing that out there as like a pejorative. They identify themselves as progressive. So it's Tiffany Cross. What's the old girl? One that's real crazy.
I don't know.
I can't think of her name.
First time I had ever come across
for real?
This stuff.
Yeah. So Andrew Gilliam is the black dude. He ran for governor of Florida,
in Florida.
years ago.
Andrew Gilliam. Okay.
Yeah. And Angela Rye. Angela Rye is the other name I was trying to think of.
Okay.
She's so crazy. That woman, woo, bless her heart. But they have a podcast. They have a podcast called the Native Land Podcast. And I like to check it out sometimes just because I just like to keep my ear to the streets and I want to know what they're saying and what they're thinking. And so I came across this video and it was about black male disillusionment, talking about why black men are leaving the Democrat Party. And I was like, I think I'll check this out. Let's see what they're saying. What's their analysis? And so I posted it, and then you wrote back to me this long analysis of all of these points you had pulled from it. And I was like, okay, we got to put this in the show. Because you just went in. You took notes.
I did. I was like, oh, we talk about this on the show. Let me go ahead and start formulating my thoughts now, because I was mad. I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. But
y'all in for it now.
So that's the premise behind this video. So yeah, man, let's roll with it.
All right.
Now let's go to these guests. First, we have joining us Terrence Woodbury, who is Black America's pollster. He's the founder of Hit Strategies and has some amazing data to share with us today, not just reflecting on why Democrats lost in 2024, but where Black folks are right now, because sometimes somebody got to talk about Black data. This group has never been polled. We talk about it all the time. Terrence, we want to do one of your polls. Gary Chambers Jr. is also joining us. He is founder of Bigger Than Me. He is the champion in the South. Let me tell you, if there's one person that's going to flip a state black, I didn't say red or blue, he's going to flip it black. It is going to be Gary Chambers. Whenever he joins us on camera, Gary, your camera is off.
And get off
he
mute.
is not a ghost of Christmas past. He is actually here in the building, y'all. And when he, there he is.
In his building. He in his building.
He's in our virtual home, and that's why we say welcome home, Andrew Gilliam. But yes, Gary Chambers Jr., and he's going to talk to us, too, a little bit about the election coming up this Saturday.
And had an amazing ad, Angela. That amazing ad that we played and talked
on this
about.
podcast. And so we won't revisit it. We will tell y'all to go back and look at that
Do
clip.
we remember when that was? I don't even remember.
We were in New York.
Yes.
We had a nice salute to you.
Hey, guys, I just want to point out that we told them that they were going to start with us about 30 minutes ago. So let's jump into the conversation.
Sorry, you guys.
Welcome home, Terrence and Gary. I think Gary's
Thanks for having me, fam. It's good to be here on Native Land Pod.
I see you representing Mo House.
Always, all day.
Happy to have you guys. Let's get right into it. Who should we start with? Terrence,
Let's start with this data.
Yes.
Listen, thank y'all so much for having me. Hit Strategies has been pouring through this data, this post-election data, exit poll data, voter file data, and we've been sitting in focus groups with voters of color and young folks for the past couple of weeks since the election to understand what happened, why it happened, how we fix it moving forward. And one of the first things we see here is despite the valiant efforts of the Harris campaign, I was on the Harris campaign for full transparency, despite the efforts of the Harris campaign, who was able to close some of the gaps that we saw when Biden was at the top of the ticket. She, in fact, closed a 22-point gap amongst young voters, an 18-point gap amongst black voters. Despite those efforts, Democrats continue to underperform with all the groups that we consider our base voters. So we got 3% less votes overall, but that includes 6% less votes from young people, 5% less from young black voters, 19 points less amongst Latino voters, 19 points, and 2% less amongst black men. Shout out to black men who tried to hold the line, and who had the smallest reduction across any other group of men. But I do want to talk about that 2% real quick, because while Joe Biden got 79% of black men's votes and Kamala Harris got 77%, the concern for me is the trend over time, y'all. It's that over time we've seen 3 to 5 point less black support amongst black men until Barack Obama had 92%, Hillary Clinton had 82%, and Kamala Harris had 77%. And so I've been arguing that, just calling it sexism is kind of lazy analysis of what's happening. This has been ongoing over time, and Democrats got some work to do to bring these brothers, not just black men, but men, bringing men back into the Democratic coalition.
Wow.
I think that that's so powerful. I know we can probably go to the next slide, but I think it's powerful to hear. One, we were all together recently, and there was a very heated conversation around whether or not it was sexism. Sure, sexism is at play, but you saw this consistent drop off from Clinton to Joe Biden, and that was at one of the higher turnout years. Joe Biden's year was actually an outlier, right? From what we know, the numbers were much higher. What do you think is the reason, Terrence, based on what you've heard, if it's not sexism, regardless of how we might feel about the numbers, what the numbers say?
Yeah, look, there are several factors contributing to underperformance of men, but overwhelmingly, men are starting to identify the Republican Party as representing their values, representing the things that they care about. I don't want to negate sexism. In fact, the slide that's up here now has a very important question that I think starts to explain where the black community is on issues of gender and gender roles. When we ask the question, do you agree or disagree that men should be head of household, 66% of black people believe that men should be head of household, including 59% of black women, that's the majority, and 75% of black men. I would argue that believing that men should be head of household is not a sexist value, right? It's a traditionally religious value. And it's one where we have to bring men along this conversation to explain that the role of gender in society is evolving. And there's a place for them in it. When Barack Obama was running for president and racism had the...
Yeah.
That's why I like listening to this. That is why I like listening to it, man, because you get to see where they're coming from. Right?
That's right.
So your religious values, but like I said, these are self-professed progressives. You got to move past that old religious stuff.
Right.
Right.
We're evolving.
Yeah. We're evolving. Right. And so, like I said, the black community is conservative by nature because it's religious. Right. But yet we vote for these people, who are trying to convince us to vote against our own values, because this is the thing. And he's saying it. They have to try to change our values. That's the goal here. The goal is to change our values. They have to bring black men along. We got to bring the black community along, right? They are attempting to change our values, right? And I can tell you right now, I hold the values of my grandparents, right? So if we want to talk about Black values, I would say that I'm more in line with the historical Black community than they are. But they would claim that they're the Blackity Blacks. I'm like, no, I'm holding the line because they say, oh, yeah, thanks to all the Black men that held the line for Kamala. Like, no, I'm holding the line for the ancestors. You know, like they used to say. It's really, they're the ones who are out of line with historical Black community beliefs and values, right? Not me, but yet but you and I are the ones who call the coon sellout Uncle Toms, and these are the Blackity Blacks because, as we said earlier, the effort to convince the Black community to turn in a more leftist, collectivist, Marxist way. That's who these people are. That's what they represent, right? And so they are intentionally trying to push Black people in a certain direction, right? And so, yeah.
Yep. Well said, brother. Well said.
Had the potential to undermine his candidacy. He didn't wag his finger at white folks and say, shame on you, right? Mm-hmm. He had a conversation with America about how we're not red states and blue states. We're not Black states and white states. And how even his grandmother, his white Hawaiian grandmother, held unconscious bias. And he offered an opportunity for America to move beyond that bias. Well, we didn't offer that to Black men. We said either you're with us or you're bad. Either you're with us or you're wrong. Either you're with us or you're immoral. You know, we're telling them that their Bible is wrong. And so there's another way here to bring men, not just Black men, but to bring men along this journey as society is evolving and to ensure that they know that it's not all masculinity is toxic and there's going to be a place for them in it, but we're going to have to define what that non-toxic masculinity is.
I was about to say, Terry, some of this is, I hate if this is a minor point, but, you know, okay, we were raised to believe that men should be at the head of the household. I wonder what it means functionally, because I believe.
No, I'm just saying, like, what does this non-toxic masculinity? It looked like feminism. That's what.
Thank you.
Their definition of non-toxic masculinity is feminism, and they're gonna. And one of the guys on here is gonna say it in so many words later. I'm just waiting for it because I just wanted to do this podcast just to hear him say this one line. But we can go.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much here.
I think I grew up with that belief as well. I just don't know how it plays out, right? Like who writing the checks, who's turning the head when it needs to be, those sorts of things are, I would just say this about that statement of, do you believe that men should be having that? I think many of us cop to that, believe in it, subscribe to it, mostly, as you pointed out, through a religious premise. And if we had to write functionally down, what does it mean to have men as head of the household? I think everybody's list is going to look different.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm glad that probably isn't the question that you asked. But I also think that your point around the rise in men choosing Republican or the Republican Party as homo reflective, I kind of think it's the party you can be a member of and not be judged and not be held accountable. Exactly right. That you can say what it is that you think in your innermost moments. And
wait a minute, hold on. Catch what he said. He slipped it in there, not be held accountable. Not be held accountable to the things that you want.
Yes.
Like, I can tell you right now that the right can absolutely have a problem with being overly judgy on certain things. If you don't toe the line exactly right. I mean, so yeah.
I'll say this. In terms of masculinity is okay in the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's the biggest point. And
for him to slip that language in there to say not be held accountable, that's why y'all lost. That's why y'all lost. You slipped.
Because Obama tried to. Yeah, Obama tried to put us in our place and hold us accountable. It was like, man, go somewhere.
It was Democrat black men were like, hey, hold up. Who you talking to, bro? Who you talking to? You need to watch your tone, how you talking to me. even Democrat black men were like, "Hey, you need to hold up on that, man." All right, I'm sorry. I had to point that out that he slipped in the not hold them accountable. Yeah, he thought he was slick.
It's going to cancel you. That it's safe because the stakes appear to be not as high with what you do or don't do.
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. Masculinity has become so triggering on the left. I mean, I've had this conversation in groups of progressives who've asked me, well, what is a non-toxic version of masculinity? Mm-hmm. As if they don't know non-toxic men, as if I'm not standing in the room presenting this data, right? And so there are values like masculinity, like hard work, religion, patriotism, family, all these things that we have ceded to the right. I had a young man tell me in a focus group, anytime he sees an American flag on somebody's house, he knows they're white and he knows they're Republican. Well, we're not going to be able to just cede family values, patriotism, masculinity. I could tell you right now, all of those values are more important to my father than the Democratic Party.
Can I ask you really quick? By the way, this is quickly becoming, I just texted the co-host. I was like, this is my favorite podcast ever so far.
I know.
But
I'm into it.
I'm really into it too. So thank you guys. Gary, I want to get you in here because I know there are some thoughts and feelings and ideas you have. Like you don't necessarily do focus groups, but you be in the streets with the people. So I want to hear from you on like not only the part about the head of the household, but also what you think is the cause of the shift. Now Terrence typing his ass off.
I was gonna say, who is typing?
That's Terrence. Look at Terrence. Guilty.
Terrence straight in the slide over there.
He didn't want me to ask you a good question, Gary. He know I can't focus. That is so rude. But no, I'm just playing. But the head of household piece, especially being in the South, but also what you think is the reason, like when you talk to people, what's the reason for them to have even either stayed at home in 24, particularly black men, or to have voted against their interests and voted with the Trump party?
I think it's, first of all, thank you all for having me today.
Thank you, brother, for being here.
An important conversation. I have struggled with what I feel is getting the voices of black men to be heard in this season, right? I think that there's been a period of time, and black men, the patriarchal structure of America has been guilty of muting women and their perspectives for so long that once we began to sit back and listen a little bit, our voices in response have not been heard. And I think you see that in the reactions in elections, right? I think that overwhelmingly, we see that black men want to be for the policies and the things that Democrats are for. However, if you are telling me that I have to be for something, well, damn it, I'm a man, right? I ain't got to be for nothing. And so what you see in some men is a automatic rejection to the fact that I get to have a say in what is happening here, right? We have been talked at so much rather than talked to. When we talk about the 20% of black men who are on the other side, we spend so much time talking about them and so little time valuing the 80% of black men who were on the side of Democrats, who have been supporting black women. I'm from a city, Baton Rouge, where for over a decade, the majority of our elected officials in the black community were black women because black men and women put them in power. That's how we ended up with a Sharon Weston Broome as the first black woman mayor of our city, right? And her career would not get there if black men had not supported her. So I think that acknowledgement of black men has to happen at a greater pace, at a louder volume than we have had in the past. When the vice president was running, I tell you personally, there are people I reached out to in August saying, I think we should be having some roundtables with brothers. We should be doing some things. I was told in nice ways and not so nice ways by certain people, like, look, we ain't focused on that right now. You know, we need to get white America, middle America, all of this. And one of the things I've said to Democrats in the beginning from day one is, if your base is black men and black women, if that is the base, you take care of them before you go see about anybody else, right? You make sure that those people are satisfied, that they feel valued. And in our community, black women are always more loyal then black men are going to be in these situations. If you come testing us with certain situations, we're going to look for the other option. Okay? Black women have a lot more. Black women have a lot more to sacrifice through this government, right? The government isn't trying to take away our right to see a doctor the way that we need to. So there are certain things that black women cannot negotiate with in this scenario that black men can. The other thing I think is the Democratic Party sucks at an economic message. When you talk about this conversation about who's the head of household, black men are concerned about how they provide for their family.
Yeah.
Man. So that was a lot.
Oh my gosh. We made it through half of that whole podcast. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. So I was waiting. That guy right there is who's going to say my favorite part. I thought it was coming up, but yeah, they're right. The Democrat Party is the party of black women. That it is. That's just what it is. They cater to black women. They message to black women. And then they basically tell black men, get on board. That's really their strategy.
Yeah.
It is the black feminist party, is what it is.
Yeah.
And they wonder why black men are starting to, like they're saying, buck up against it. Like, hold up, wait a minute, what? You know? Yeah. And this dude, he's going to say a line. As soon as he say it, we got to pause it because I'm just going to have to say something. But
by all means, brother. By all means.
But yeah, but like you said, the base of the Democrat, why is the base of the Democrat Party black people where we're only 12, 13% of the population?
Well, I think that's the reality. He got smacked with the reality of that when he said we need to be having conversations with black men. They were like, no, we need to get middle America. Now, I will say that they were right when they told him that, because them getting black men was not going to save them this time. Even if they got black men, it was not going to save them because Trump won by a large margin. It was not a small margin. But the reason that they lost middle America is very similar to the reason that they lost black men. And they're talking about some of it right now. But it's not okay. It's not okay for, which I think that all of them really actually do believe in what they're saying. But like in a circle like this, it's not okay for a black man to come in there and say, hey, all the stuff that y'all on, I ain't about that. It's not okay for a black man to come in there and say that. So he voted differently.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No. Black men they really want to vote for the platform of the Democrat Party. You know, we're really all about, open borders, socialism,
trans stuff.
Boys compete with my daughters in sports. Like that, I really want to vote for that. I really do.
But it's not okay for them to talk about that being the problem. Notice they haven't brought that up one time.
No, they're tone
brought
deaf.
it up one time.
They are tone deaf.
I think they know. They know. I don't think that they're that tone deaf. They know, but it's not okay to say that in the Democrat Party. It's not okay to say it.
Yeah, facts. True that. All right, let's go see where he's going with this economic thing.
How they show up in the world financially, and how we do that when we look at 59% of black women saying that they see that role is the head of the household is for a black man. That is because they see the role of a black man as providing for his family and creating stability for his family. Whether that is a 50-50 makeup of the household or taking care of 100% of the bills, because there's a lot of black women in America who don't pay a bill because a black man pays them all. Okay, those black men are not praised or considered enough in the conversations. And that is a part of the problem, because we spend so much time listening to the podcast bros who have gotten so much voice in this hour that we have abandoned the voices of the men who have been anchors in our communities for decades. The reason I learned how to follow a black woman's leadership, my pastor was a black woman who had a black husband who was 6'5" and 200.
Pause. That is why they are losing black men. Pow. because, and this is the comment I was waiting on, their whole premise is follow women, right? Their whole premise is follow the lead of black women, black men. Support a strong black woman. They had those shirts out that Roland Martin was wearing saying, vote like a black woman.
Yeah.
Man, you done got me messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying not to say some words. I'm a grown man.
Yeah.
Let me tell me to follow the lead of a woman, follow the leadership. I'm a man. They don't know how to deal with men.
They don't.
That is not a message that's going to get me on board with, hey men, get behind and follow your women and let them lead.
Yeah.
What I thought, and I'm a military dude. Like, who gonna be at the front of the line? It ain't the women. Like, this whole follow women, I hate labels. And they're just, oh, that's just misogynistic. Like, no, it's human nature.
Right.
Right. It's human nature. Like, when someone's breaking in my house, I'm not standing behind my wife while she goes sees what the issue is. Right? No, I'm going to stand up and lead and protect my family. Leadership is men and women can both have traits of leadership. But when we're just talking about in the role of a family, in the role of a lot of areas of society, is going to be men who are leading, who's going to be asked to put their lives on the line, who's going to be asked to do the dangerous jobs. Like, we talk about, in the past about like feminism and all of this type of stuff, and they want equal this and equal that. It was like, well, I think 50% of roofers should be women. I think all bricklayers should be women. I think 50% of all people on the oil rig should be women, right? Nobody believes that because that's not what they want. They want soft, cushy feminism. They want air-conditioned jobs.
They want power.
Yes. And so don't ask men to go out, put their lives on the line, do the heavy lifting, and then say, follow women. Like, no, that is not the natural state of a man. A man wants to be a leader in his household. He wants to be a leader in his family. He wants to be a leader in the community, right? And to tell him the toxic masculinity, you need to support women. Bro, you're going to lose me. Yeah. You're going to lose me because that is not asking me to be the best version of myself. The best version of any man is he steps up to the plate and he leads. That's what I'm telling. That's what you tell young kids. You tell young boys, young men, teenagers. Hey, son, you got to step up and be a leader. You got to protect your neighborhood. You got to protect your family. You got to provide, right? That message don't go with, oh yeah, and also follow the lead of black women.
Right.
Huh?
Right.
It's just a counter message.
Right.
Right. And it's like, oh, you're not supposed to say it because that's misogyny. That's the patriarchal system. I don't care what you call it, dude. Like, it's like being called racist. Like, nobody cares anymore. You can call me a misogynist. You can call me, the patriarch. Yeah, whatever. God made Israel a patriarchy. Don't try to shame me that a patriarchal society is some kind of bad thing. Like, no, I have no issues with, a lot of things in our society today. I think the feminist train has sent us down a railroad that is, I think women are less happy today, and the numbers show that, I think the fact that we have that women to work, not that they work because they want to work, but because two incomes in a lot of cases are deemed necessary, women are forced to work. I posted a video on Facebook of this woman who was she made a video crying because it was time for her to go back to work after her maternity leave. And she had her twins. And she was crying because she felt like she was abandoning them. And she just wasn't ready to hand care, But women are forced to do that now. Like, and I saw it was a meme, and it was a picture of a cubicle. And it's like, I can't believe women fought for this. Like, to be in the cubicle. Like, yeah. And I went into a lot of more of it, like who actually benefits from having women in the workforce, and the government now has double the tax revenue because both people are working. Then also the government now gets your children because now both parents have to work. So now the children now belong to the state for 8 to 10 hours a day in education, right? And so there's a lot behind these movements that forced women out of the home and told them that prioritizing their family was oppressive. Prioritizing your husband and your kids is oppressive, right? And then to abandon them, I can say abandon, that's a bad word. To dedicate your allegiance, your time, and your value to a boss is valuable. But to then dedicate yourself to your family is not valuable or less valuable, right? And so, these conversations about men and women and leadership in the Black community is a big topic. And men will say, my wife will go to work and listen to her boss and say, yes, sir, all this type of stuff, and then come home and I just get nothing but pushback, right? And it's not that she should say, yes, sir, and I'll tell her husband. His point is she's submitting to someone. She goes to work every day and submits herself to her boss. But to say, women, submit yourself to your husband, oh, that's bad. That's misogyny and patriarchy. What have we taught these women? What have we taught our society, right? You're submitting to someone. The man you chose to make your husband, don't submit to him, combat him, fight him, but go to work and to your boss and say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be back by that time. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be back in my office. When do you need it? Okay. But if your husband say, hey, can you make me something to eat? Oh, that's oppression. It makes no sense. It just makes no sense. And I know for some people who have like the feminist bent, this is like kryptonite. They're like, oh, this hurts. I don't like how this sounds. But just think about it for a minute. Just think about it. Who has benefited from teaching this to women, right? It is not women, and it's not children. It's not marriages, because you know what? We have 50% of marriages are ending in divorce today. You know, in the Black community, we only 30% of us even married anyway. Like, and this is at the same time where Black women are being super educated and outpacing Black men, but yet look at the outcomes. You know, a lot of them are single moms. There are no husbands. There's no dads around. There's no men, right? Or single income families. It's like, what are we doing? How is this worked out better for us, right? But we keep getting told that this old way, like they said, we got to move, we got to evolve, we got to move past these old religious ways. Well, we've been doing that since the 1960s, and what has it gotten us? You know, the results are way worse, and women today are not happy. They're not happy. You know, you see women on TikTok like, I'm sick of working. You know, all of a sudden traditionalism is coming back. It's like, I just want a man that I just want to stay home, work, raise my kids. I'm sick of this job. You know, and it's like, yeah, women should be able to work if they want to work, but we have made it to where women have to work.
Yeah.
And we've told them that their value has come through anything they do outside the home, and inside the home it's oppression. And that just hasn't been, if we just think through it logically, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
When we think about the value that women bring to society through the proper raising of children to be the next generation, right? It's, we have totally undervalued what that is and how much that means, you know? And the result of that has been, it's been negative. So,
in all kinds of ways, it's been negative in all kinds of ways. You want to talk about kids who have all kinds of issues, anxiety, depression, all kinds of issues have come from this. Not just, the fact that their worldview tends to be shaped by the architects of the system that educated them, Mr. Dewey and Mr. Marx. I mean, man, there's so much that I got to go in on. I don't want to do it too early.
Yeah.
If you want me to go back to the video, we can keep playing it.
We don't have to.
Okay. Did we get to the part that you wanted to get to?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I just wanted to get to the part where he said that because I was like, because to me that's like that's the whole podcast. Why are we losing black men? What you just said right there.
Boom.
What you just said right there.
That's yes.
You know, and that's why I say their version of masculinity is just feminism. Hey, black men, follow black women.
Follow black women, dude.
Yeah.
When he said that, I think that was about the moment that I stopped watching because I don't think I made it to the very end. I think I did get here, and I had to get ready. To get my workday started, and but I started. I was like, let me go ahead and start typing out, and I put in the comment because you had posted this up to Facebook. And I was like, no, I'm gonna comment this out. And then I started making sure. I was like, yo, we need to put this in the show because I got to go in on this. I don't have time to go in on this right now, but I need to go in on this junk. Because it's ridiculous. So first of all, you mentioned this whole you mentioned the whole support a black woman, follow a black woman. Why? They never answered that. Why?
Yeah, because the Democrat Party is the party of black women. That's who they prioritize and raise up. And so they want you to vote for them. So they're like, yeah, support black women.
Yeah.
Now you say black women are more loyal.
I guess, yeah, they are. I mean, as far as Democrats are concerned, black women are highly, highly, highly loyal. Democrats knew that they had to win over middle America this time. And it's just so funny to me that they couldn't do it. They couldn't change their position. And that's what shows you that their position is not just politics. It's worldview. It's a religion to them.
It is.
They can't shift on what their dogma is because that goes against their canon. And so when they say follow a black woman to them, when you talk about cultural Marxism, a black woman to them is almost at the peak of who is oppressed in society to them.
It is, but she got to get some more intersections on her though. It has to be a black woman who was a lesbian who is also disabled.
Yes, that would be pretty high.
Then that's like
be
the
pretty
ultimate,
high on the list.
Yeah.
Be pretty high.
Man,
I mean,
that's the final boss.
I don't know because if one of them transitioned,
a trans black woman who is also a lesbian who is also in a wheelchair, disabled. Yes.
That's the final boss.
Yeah, that's the final boss. You're right. You're right. So the end of the day, the final boss is still a dude. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Oh God. you right. Yeah. You right. But
that's
okay,
my boy. My boy Delano Squires always say it's crazy how these black feminists finally found a man they'll submit to, the trans men, the trans women. And it's so true. It's like, y'all do realize those are just men, right? Yeah.
Oh man. Dang. Oh man. That was a mic drop right there. Oh God. Man, I'm not. I'm canceled.
While I'm dropping mics,
canceled.
on the I say this, I understand people's situations, right? But when I thought about like sending my kids to school, my wife working and we got to send them to school, and we were trying, before we had kids, we were talking about this, right?
Yeah. And
of course, this was back in the day, so it's a little different. I was like, man, your kids are like having a cell phone. Like you can get them on nights and weekends. That's when you get them. They're like cell phone minutes.
That's right.
Like, I don't want to raise my kids where I just get them at night,
right,
and on the weekend. And so that was always my thing. I know it's an old one because if you're not a certain age, you don't understand.
I was about to say you gotta explain that.
Them cell phone minutes So you had a cell phone plan. It wasn't unlimited minutes. You had like 500 minutes, depending on what your plan was. But after a certain time at night, I think it was after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Those minutes didn't count against your cell phone minutes.
Yeah.
And on the weekends. And so people would wait, hey, call me back after 9 o'clock. Don't you call nobody at 8:52. Nope. Call me after 9 o'clock. And then on the weekends.
What was night and weekend minutes? That's what they called them. Night and weekend minutes. And and then there were some of the networks, some of the cell phone networks providers called it anytime minutes. So you had the anytime minutes, and then your night and weekend minutes.
Nights and weekends.
And I was on Sprint, so it was 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, it was unlimited. It was free minutes or whatever after 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so that's how
I translated to parenting today was with, when you send your kids to, to school for 8 hours a day, and then let's say there's some kind of after school curriculum or program because you don't get off work till 5:30, right?
Right.
And so they got to be there. And then even if they say they're doing sports now, so they got to go to soccer practice, football practice. By the time you get home, it's eat dinner, maybe do some homework, get in the shower, go to bed. Like that's your time that you have with your kid.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends, whatever y'all might have to do. Like, so it's like, okay, who is really influencing and molding your kids if you don't have them the vast majority of the time? Someone else does, right? And that's something I realized before I had kids. And so it was already a plan that my wife wouldn't work once we had kids, because I was like, that don't make sense. Right. I'm like, why would we do that? I care about who they come out and who they turn out to be. I don't want to hand them over to someone else for 8 to 10 hours a day, So
that's right. And we wound up making the same decision. I wasn't going to tell my wife. You can't work. I wasn't going to do that. But she came to that decision after we had our first child, and she spent that 3 months with our baby, and then it was time to go back. And there was a certain point where she was like, "Hey, make me a housewife. I can't leave this baby."
Because it's unnatural. It is unnatural to take your 6-week-old baby, because back in the day, maternity leave was like you got weeks. So you had a 6-week-old baby that you're dropping off at daycare so that you can go sit in a cubicle and type up memos. Yeah. Like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah. That ain't how it's supposed to be.
That's exactly right. And I remember her making her saying, "Hey, I don't want to go back. I don't want to do it." And I was like, "Hey, God will take care of us. The numbers the math don't math right now, but it'll work out, and it did. We made that decision, and the Lord, shortly thereafter, I wound up getting a couple of raises that made it to where it worked, and I wound up making as an individual more, almost more than we made together
combined.
Yeah. And eventually, I far surpassed what we were doing back then. But like, I can't imagine, what it would have been like if we didn't make that call. And I'm glad that she wanted to make that call, because I wasn't going to force her. I wasn't going to force her into that, but I hoped she would make that decision. And I think, this whole idea that we're gonna follow a black woman, when they say that stuff, I just don't understand how this dude doesn't realize you a red-blooded black man. How did you not realize that you just lost pretty much you could not read the room. You lost every man who voted for Trump. The reason he voted for Trump is he realizes that this whole idea of saying that we're supposed to follow women on this stuff, you lost those guys because they realize that's unnatural. A man who understands his place in the world understands that with leadership comes responsibility. With leadership comes sacrifice.
And I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, you can't teach these young men that they have to take responsibility and then at the same time tell them follow the lead of women.
Right.
It's like, because once you tell them, once a mindset of responsibility comes in, which is what you want them to have, that doesn't click with, oh, now also follow my woman. Like, no, I have a responsibility. Right. And it's almost like, it's almost intentional, because if you rob men of that drive or that sense of responsibility, what do you end up with? You end up with very weak, undriven, soft men. Like, you just, it's just.
And there are countries in the world who are having that problem right now, who are trying to figure it out. Yep. I've been to Europe as a military member, and I can tell you that the European women enjoy the masculinity of American men. That's all I'll say. Right. There is a complete difference in bravado and confidence and just overall just kind of masculinity. Right.
And they gravitate towards it because their men are soft.
Dude. Yeah, dude. Not all of them, right? Not all of them, but
not all.
Culturally,
the culture.
Culturally, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, and there's an understanding though, right? With that's supposed to come with that bravado, which is really taken. There's an element. It can become toxic. It can, but there's an element of
Andrew Tate.
Right. It can become Tate, right? It can become Tate. And you ain't gonna find no cosign on Tate over here. You ain't gonna find no shelter here. All right.
Nope.
Because a real man does not exploit women.
Nope.
That's all I'm gonna say on that.
And I would say values and respects women.
100%. 100%. A real man understands that with leadership comes responsibility and sacrifice. And what does that mean? The scripture tells us exactly what that means. The scripture says that we are to love our wives like Christ loves the church and gave himself and died for her. So with the leadership comes the responsibility to take the bullets, to take the shots. When danger is there, we're the ones who are supposed to run towards the danger. We're the ones who are supposed to do the dangerous work. We're the ones who are supposed to lay our lives on the line. And you cannot say that a woman, you can look at biology, you can look at nature and see that a woman is not equipped to be the one to do the fighting. She is not equipped to be the one to go out there and have to overpower evil. That is a man's place. And women know that. They know that. And that's why those European women are attracted to the masculinity of American men, because they know that deep down. That's why in the 90s, when everybody was talking about, we need more emotionally sensitive men. We need men who are in touch with their feminine side, was what they always used to say. We need men who are in touch with their feminine side. But what did women go after? They always went after. They went after the bad boy. They went after the bad. They would say that from their mouth that they wanted a man who was in touch with his feminine side, but they always went after the bad boy. Why did they do that? Because they want someone who can protect them. That's why. And so you're never going to upend that part of society, because it is not just manufactured by society. It is a part of nature. It is a part of the way that we were created. It is a part of the way that, and this is before, I know I'm dropping a lot of Christianity here, but it was like this before the fall. The man was the leader, and the man had responsibility, and the man was the one where the buck stopped. So,
Devin, we've evolved past that, man. We're progressive. We're progressing towards the better future. We're getting away from those old, those old ways and ideas and traditions, man. We know better these days. We've evolved.
Maybe I'm just old fashioned. I don't know. Drinking my bourbon and trying to learn how to defend my family and all that. Just too old fashioned, Trying to provide. Too old fashioned, man. You know what I'm saying, dude? That is where the Democrats, they have completely put themselves in a position where they are not able to attract a man who realizes that feminism has failed us.
Dude, they tried to bring Tim Walz out there and parade him as the man's man. It was like, y'all got to be kidding me. Like, he was in the military. He coached football.
Man, y'all already know
was
his
the best
nickname.
they
I ain't
could
even got
do.
to say that. Y'all already know
that
his
was the
nickname.
best they could do.
Yes. Tim Walz, bro. Well said. Tim Walz was who they decided to roll out there. Because think about it. Think about a grown man, a masculine man. Because they knew they needed to win over men. They knew that they had a problem. Kevin Samuels was indicative that they had a problem. Kevin Samuels was an indication. Okay? I'm not saying I agree with everything that Kevin Samuels said.
No, you dropped that name, man. You trying to have us here all night, man.
But I'm saying that, and you say that name, and it's it's some people like, oh, that's the Godfather right there, and then you have some people like, ooh, that's the devil. I will say Kevin Samuels was full of the devil, but the dude did say some things. He did say some things that needed to be said. He
highlighted and brought attention to some real issues,
some real problems.
He did.
Some real problems.
Yes.
And why did you all of a sudden? What did you see? You saw black men basically filing up behind this dude, because that dude finally said things that black men had been thinking for years.
Yeah.
That nobody was willing to say out loud, and that dude basically went out there and
he became the villain.
He did. He was willing to be the villain. And then black men were like, no, he's speaking truth. Dude's over here keeping it 100. Now, I don't agree. There are many things I don't agree with Kevin Samuels on, because I think he was actually perpetuating the problems that he was critiquing in many ways, telling people to have sex outside of wedlock, etc. But dude got black men filing in behind them because all of a sudden black men had a masculine man that they could look to, especially young black men had a masculine man that they could look to. And it's the same thing that's happening with Tate. There was a void that was left. And I'm going to hit y'all with a curveball that y'all might not have seen coming.
This whole conversation I didn't see coming.
You're welcome. You didn't know you on this train. You ain't able to get off this train.
Oh my goodness.
The train has left the station. I'm
What's the curveball?
I'm gonna hit y'all with a curveball. It's our fault. It's our fault. Because we abdicated our responsibility. It's not black women's fault. It's our fault. Because we decided.
I can't argue with you, bro.
We decided that we were going to walk out on our family. We decided that we were going to we were going to allow somebody else to tell us what we were capable of. We decided that we didn't need to lead anymore. We decided we were going to let black women run our churches. We decided that we were going to let the black women have to step up. And I don't think they wanted to. They did that. I think a lot of them did it because black men weren't there. And then I think eventually they wanted to. But I think that you had black women getting elected to certain offices They stepped up because black men weren't stepping up. And so if we didn't leave the gap, if we didn't leave the vacuum, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm not saying that there weren't things that were working against us, but we're men. Dang it, we're men.
You don't give up your responsibilities because of trials and tribulations and trouble.
That's right.
No. Yeah, man. Good word. You're right. You are right. Whenever a society declines or a culture declines, you can always point back to, at some point, there was failure in male leadership. It just was. Yeah. So you can blame the women for stepping up, and we know from a biblical standpoint that tension is always there. That women desire the lead position over men. That battle that's not new.
It's part of the curse.
It's part of the curse.
You're right.
But
actually, deep down, they probably did want to. It's part of the curse.
Yeah, absolutely. But black dudes just kind of gave it up and walked away.
Yep.
And the government allowed it because the government stepped in as the provider.
Right.
And took just black men was like, I mean, she can, you know, sadly.
Yeah. I mean, she can kill the kid. She can get a welfare check. You know, they're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
They're gonna be all right. They better off without me.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, he got to go off and do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He was shacking up with some other woman. And it was immaturity, man. It was immaturity, lack of just not taking responsibility. And yeah, there are consequences for that. But here we are. And so, man, I did not expect to go down this route. This went way more off code than informed take today. It really did. And for those who don't know, my other podcast is Off Code, where we talk about issues of the black community, but through a biblical worldview. And so, we talk about a lot of these cultural things. I was not expecting to go down this route today, but it's kind of hard not to when you start talking about analyzing politics and Democratic Party and reaching black men and this conflict between black men and black women. It's kind of hard not to go down this route when you're analyzing the issues.
Yeah.
Because there's a large social dynamic to it, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to have to skip. I thought we was going to bring back Wedding the X tonight or What the X, but we're going to have to skip that because we long tonight. We are long tonight, but I think the book of the week is very fitting for this conversation.
Yes.
A lot of what we talked about tonight is addressed in this book. So yeah. Why don't you reveal what our book of the week is?
Yes, sir.
There we go. We broke out the soul, Thomas Sowell. So this book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals, is a book that will very, very help you understand a lot of what is going on today. There is this marriage in the relationship between what we call black rednecks, and he calls them black rednecks because a lot of people don't understand is that black culture, ghetto culture, is just adopted from white redneck culture. And so that's why they call them black rednecks. And then their marriage to white liberals, or white liberals taking on the cause of these black rednecks. And once you understand this marriage, you understand this marriage between the black community and the Democrat Party. Yeah.
That's right.
There are some things in here. Once you realize that black culture ain't really black culture, and it was just adopted from. And when I first heard this, it blew my mind because I used to joke around. You remember Jeff Foxworthy?
Oh yeah.
And his whole, you might be a redneck if. I used to crack up like, man, that could easily be you might be ghetto if. It was the same stuff. It was a lot of the same stuff. And then when I read this, I was like, that's why I felt like it was the same thing, because it is the same thing.
It is the same thing. That's right.
And the fact that blacks basically just took the culture that they were around, which was white rednecks in the South. That was the culture at which blacks were around, and they adopted a lot of those values and ways and beliefs. And have you ever seen if I had a thought about it, I would have pulled that video of that dude on Joe Rogan, and he's talking about Thomas Sowell, and he's talking about this book, and he's explaining to Joe Rogan basically what Thomas Sowell has been trying to get America to see. And he starts talking about this, and he starts talking about how Ebonics is actually from England, right? And Joe Rogan was like, what? He's like, yeah, Black English, what we call Ebonics, is actually from England. And it has to do with who were they around when they came in the South. And you look at, because different people in England migrate to different parts of the U.S. So the people who migrated to the South were different than the Puritans in the North, like completely different.
Yes.
And he starts talking about these ads in England, where he's like, if you listen to these ads about this custard and the way they talk and the way they say things, and it's like this deep English, Irish type accent, he said when you hear that accent, you don't hear Ebonics. But if you look at the speech pattern and how they say, and I be doing this and we be doing that, and it's like that is the structure of Black English. He's like, that's where it came from. It came from England. It never originated with Black Americans to begin with. And it was like, wow. So like Thomas Sowell is like just exploiting like where he's this is how he explains Thomas Sowell's mission: to explain to people what they're seeing within Black culture, to understand that it's not that there's something inherently wrong with Black people, but it is a formation of culture, right? Because he talks about like IQ gaps. He was like Black soldiers in Germany who stayed in Germany, their children have no different IQs than the white kids, right? Because he's saying they're not associated with the culture. He starts talking about Blacks who are from the West Indies, who tend to be very successful, like Colin Powell and all these type of people came from Black slaves from the West Indies, not from the Southern U.S., right? There is about the culture within the Southern U.S. that Blacks adopted that is indicative of some of the issues we see within the culture, right? And that's his whole argument, that has nothing to do with skin color. It's the culture. And the culture of Black America really isn't any different than the culture of white redneck America. They have the same outcomes. And it's like, yeah, we do. The trailer park and the projects ain't no different.
That's it. That's exactly right. And the culture's not that different.
No, the cultures aren't that different. The only difference is today, you had the kind of the creation of rap music, gang violence. So the murders in the Black community are higher. But outside of that, it's all the same. It is all the same.
Right.
And so that's what this book about. So if you haven't read it, go check out Thomas Sowell's Black Rednecks and White Liberals. It will help you make sense of a lot of the marriage, especially between liberals, progressives, and the Black community.
Yes, so. And it'll help you. It'll help you also to understand the way that white liberals really do look at Black people.
Yes,
and I think that it's gonna. If you haven't read it, it will illuminate some things for you. It's a deeper red pill. It's a deeper red pill.
Once you go down the Thomas Sowell route, you're not going back.
You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you've known. And this is not tinfoil hat stuff. He's a respected researcher. He is a Hoover Institute fellow at Stanford University. He has researched the ever-living daylights out of everything that he's talking about. He will tell you that the facts are from the research, and he has an entire team researching stuff. The conclusions are his. So he doesn't place the conclusions on his team, but that is not, he is not a tinfoil hat quack He is a highly respected, higher education. I think it's Dr. Thomas Sowell, if I'm not mistaken.
So his profession is he's an economist. That's how he got started. But he quickly got into, I'm gonna tell you, the best social. What's the word I'm looking for? The people I found, the people who examine culture the best tend to be economists, not people who would have a sociology degree, right? They tend to understand the world a whole lot better for some reason than the people who go through the actual social studies. Hey, Claire. Hey, Justin. Good job, man. Good job.
That's what I'm talking about. We tip our proverbial hats to you, sir. Well done, Claire. You definitely need to read that. I am sorry that the world will not look the same to you after that. I'm not sorry. You will be more informed. Man, that's fantastic.
When you say that, once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what Pearl used to say. If you guys know Pearl from YouTube, I can't get down with Pearl no more. But back in the day when Pearl was doing Thomas Sowell videos, I was rocking with Pearl.
Oh yeah,
But she used to say that all the time. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Can't unsee it, man. You can't unsee it. And he's not. He's not. He brings the receipts. He brings the receipts.
He does.
Yeah. So no, that's awesome. Claire, you let us know when you finish reading it.
we expect a full report.
Yep.
And you can come on Informed Takes and give your thoughts.
That's right. We'll have you anytime. Oh man, that would be a great thing to kind of get to see how this is maybe changes her perspective a little bit.
Maybe we start doing like Pearl. And start bringing people on and red pilling people through Thomas Sowell videos.
Snap. Oh, I love it.
Oh, man.
Man. The last thing I'll say about that book is that it's important to me that Black people see that there's no reason to cling on to this culture. There's no reason to cling on to that culture. And I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to live in another country where I was surrounded by, other people of African descent, where the culture is very, very, very different. Because it caused me to let go of that part. Like, that's not a part. I never really knew that because I didn't spend much time in the South. My parents moved away when I was a baby. I didn't experience the South till I was 10 years old. And I was very different. I came back and I was very, very, very different, right? But that it caused me to not latch on to that as being a part of who I am and what I consider, Black identity. And so I think this book can help you to see, like, hey, when you know the history of it, it's like, there's really no reason to try to cling on to this,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Or like, I like to joke around and talk about how Blackness is just a different form of white ideology. Like, you just took a German philosophy and now it's called Blackness. Like, that's still just as white.
Yeah. you took the Black folks, a little spoiler, you had white folks, people from Britain who immigrated to the South tended to be from the more lawless areas of Great Britain, and just culturally were not as upstanding and honorable as other parts, and so those folks generally tended to populate the North, and the more lawless people tended to populate the South, and so the slaves came up around that culture.
It's a reason that till this day, the Southern accent is viewed as uneducated. That didn't start in the U.S. It was like that in Britain. That accent was deemed uneducated.
That's right.
And it's the reason that even today, a lot of Southerners have insecurities against the North. And it's not all about the Civil War. The Civil War was just kind of part of that. That tension was already there. And Northerners look down upon Southerners as being uneducated and backwards and backwoods. Like, that didn't start here. It started in England, and it came over.
Yeah.
You know, and once you understand that, you're like, okay, it makes sense.
That's what I'm trying to tell y'all. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. Yeah. But man, this has been good. And I appreciate all y'all hanging out with us. We went long tonight. But it was worth it. It was worth it. So man, you got any final thoughts? The article, the video, you know, what are your final takeaways for tonight?
I will say two things. I will say that one on the article, and we did these two things together because there's a connection there. And normally we don't get into issues around the Black community because we're talking about politics and how they affect everybody generally across the world. But it's hard to talk about why Black people vote the way they vote and the situation of why the Democrat Party is now losing Black men. Because if you want to look at the causes, it absolutely connects to Black culture and what's been happening. And so on the idea of systemic oppression, like I'll ask the same question. Can you show it to me? How's it affected you? And if it hasn't affected you, tell me somebody by name who it's affected and bring the receipts. And I don't say this insultingly. I'm saying this because the thing that I really want you to get is that if you can't find it, if you can't identify it, then just go out there and just be the best that you can be. If you can't find it, then maybe that means that nothing's in your way, and nothing's in any of our way, and you should just go and just take this thing to the limit. See how far you can take it.
Yeah.
And that is I give the same word. I give the same word to Black men, to Black women, and on why black men have stopped voting. I would say, hey, don't turn around and go back. Don't turn around and go back. I'm not saying you got to keep voting Republican. Don't turn around and go back and be told what you're supposed to do. It's time. You did this because you recognize that somebody was disrespecting your role as a man. Take up your role as a man and go and do your homework. Go and understand what means that what kind of policies are going to lead to you being a free man who's able to achieve as much as he possibly can and to provide for his family and to make sure that he's one of the ships that's lifting other ships, right? That the tide is lifting all the other ships. Don't go back. Don't go back to doing things the way. Don't let nobody shame you. Don't let nobody cancel you. You're gonna catch some arrows, but you're a man, and you can take it.
And those arrows are gonna come from a lot of Black women.
Oh yeah, you gonna catch them things. We probably gonna catch a few. We probably gonna catch a few after people see this episode. After some of these clips go live,
I have caught so many arrows. I don't think there's anywhere for them to hit again. I think they just go straight through where the other hole was. Like, because there's nothing left, man. I've been hit with so many arrows over the years. Like I said, I've been in this seat since 2003. Right, man. That was 22 years ago, and so. Yeah, man, I've been catching strays and called every name, and it is what it is, but I think the world or the nation, the culture is starting to catch up slowly, but it's starting to catch up. People are starting to see that, hello, something's not right and something's not working, and we need to do something different. And if you go and you examine our ancestors, you examine the Black community when we were intact families, strong churches, doing well, upward mobility, even in the face of great adversity. you would see that at the time it's because we were heavily steeped in our faith. We were heavily steeped in Christianity and a Christian worldview. And there were certain responsibilities that came along with that as a man. You had to work hard, you had to provide for your family, you had to protect your family, you had to honor your wife, you had to raise your children, and the community around you expected you to do that. And then along the way, that changed, and we began to make excuses, and we began to turn to the government, and we began to praise single mothers and uplift them, and we began to promote women into leadership, even within the church. And like, we just got away. We got told that these were old backwoods ways, and we needed to progress and be different. The same thing they're saying now. And over time, we allowed certain forces in our community to drive us that way. And we live with the results today. And so if we want to improve on the issues we see, the issues that Kevin Samuels pointed out, that was my issue with Kevin Samuels. I agree with a lot of the issues he pointed out. I highly disagree with his solutions. Because the solutions are to return to what we left, not to turn to pragmatism and say, hey, women, if your man cheats on you, don't you leave him and break up your family. No, dude, don't cheat on your wife. Like, that should have been his first message, not, hey, what he do outside the home don't really matter. Like, that's Kevin Samuels' message went off the rails. But he pointed out a lot of things that were wrong and that we need to be addressed. But the solutions is to get back to what we lost and what we left. And what drives strong families today is largely still a deeply, heavily religious worldview and ethic, right? And so that's what I would say we need to get back to, and that is the solution to the issues in which we see today. But man, with that, this has been good. Hey, y'all, we want to thank y'all for joining us tonight. We appreciate all the support that you guys always give. One way you can support the channel is to like, subscribe, share on social media. Check out Devin at Podium Studios. If you guys need some podcast support, he's the guy to go check out for that. Check out the merch store. We got the new merch. Claire got her merch. She sent me a picture, and I was like, yes, that is awesome. That hoodie was looking good. And so, yeah, check out the merch store. And then, like I say, join us each week, each Sunday, as we tackle the latest in foreign and domestic politics. But hey, until then, you guys stay safe and stay informed.
Stay informed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. This podcast was filmed at Podium Studios at Marietta Square. Grow your business with turnkey, professional quality podcasting, live streaming, and online events. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about anything. Just come in and record. Learn more at thepodium.studio. Step up to the podium.